A deadly danger loomed over one of the worlds because a ferocious dragon had descended. In the entire underworld, only one person could stand up to the ancient creature. He was one of the 12 princes of the underground world named Bechi. To save the underground world, he cultivated for over 1,000,000 years and eventually subdued the great disaster. However, shortly after becoming the supreme ruler of the underground world and creating a military artifact, Prince Bechi passed away. His former subordinates rebelled, and countless treasures and territories were divided. An unfamiliar girl struck up a conversation with the protagonist during his walk in the park and told him this story. She claimed that Prince Bechi was the young man's ancestor, and now he had to accept the legacy. The protagonist's name was Lu Wu. He was in his early 20s, and he was a tall, handsome brunette. The stranger took offense when he called her a simple girl who had appeared out of nowhere. She claimed that she was almost as old as his ancestor. The girl's name was Bei Li, and her mission was to help Lu Wu inherit the prince's will, unite the underworld, become its supreme ruler, and take revenge on the traitors. She would be able to help fulfill this mission and become a loyal assistant to the future ruler. The young man, of course, did not believe a word she said and continued to tease her, saying that she was now only a few dozen people and would order horses to carry out the mission. A powerful blow to the gut followed these jokes, and the young man doubled over in pain. Bai Li announced that she would allow the young man to go with her to the underworld and then return him home, while Lu Wu vomited his lunch on the ground. Out of nowhere, right in the middle of the park, a portal appeared. Following the girl who calmly entered the portal, Lu Wu, sitting on a bench, began to be sucked into the unknown underground world. Soon, the young man came to his senses, sitting on the ground and rubbing his head in an unfamiliar place. It turned out that all this was his domain, named after his ancestor Bechi, and was the largest underground world. The new owner had to figure out a way to regain the lost territories. Lu Wu decided that he would take care of this matter and take revenge on the traitors. But first, he wanted to get acquainted with the mighty army that his ancestor had left him, and after the young man leveled up, he would take over the entire underground world. But everything turned out to be sadder. The guy was a general without an army, and he would have to start from scratch. Lu Wu immediately lost heart and said he would not do it, but Bei Li said that the young man had a military artifact and that she would be happy to help him. The presence of a military artifact sounded very promising because the girl did not look like a reliable and strong ally. The most powerful artifact in the underworld was created by Prince Bechi to unite the entire underworld. The prince died just as he was finishing the artifact, but Bei Li had also been involved in its creation, so she completed it. And this artifact turned out to be very powerful. It was a ring. The power of the artifact lay in the use of in-ki to strengthen the body. As long as the soul exists, the body can be replaced at any moment. As long as the souls are under control, there will be an immortal army of spirits. The girl put the ring on Lu Wu's finger, and it immediately activated because it identified the wearer's identity. When the blood analysis was complete and the ring confirmed that the wearer was a descendant of the prince, the artifact was bound, and the basic functions of Yin-Yang's body and soul were activated. Lu Wu felt an incredible power filling him from within and without, but immediately the question arose about the souls, which he simply did not have, and it was unknown where to get them. Bei Li was very upset because she hadn't thought about finding other souls. She had somehow overlooked this, and now felt that she had let her master down. The guy tried to calm her down, saying that in the end, everything could be solved, because she remembered what he did in reality. In his normal life, Lu Wu had unsuccessfully run his business, created a gaming website, and now decided to expand the artifact's functions and combine it with the game he had developed. While players were playing the game, they would be able to summon their souls, and as long as the game was popular, they would have a countless army of undead. Ideas immediately popped into Bei Li's head that if a player died, they would be reborn thanks to the mechanics of the game. Lu Wu couldn't help but admit that the little girl understood everything so well. However, creating a game based on the underworld is quite a large project, and it would be impossible to complete it in a short period of time. Bei Li claimed that using the artifact, it was possible to create various things from energy, including building locations. Spiritual power is the main indicator of strength in the underground world. The more power, the more powerful the creature. Spiritual power can be extracted to increase power and restore the palace. In addition, a monetary commission can be charged for completing the mission. The heroes entered a huge hall that was completely empty except for 2 columns. Bei Li said that this place was built by her ancestor, and she helped him so she could make some changes. Although everything had fallen into disrepair over the years, the grandeur of the past could still be felt, and at the very least, everything could be put in order. 2 hours later, it was done, and Bei Li announced that all that remained was to connect the artifact to the game, so they could return to real life. Returning to Lu Wu's apartment, they quickly accomplished what they had planned. Using the soul extraction formation, the girl connected to the game server. While the player was downloading and launching the game, his soul was sent to the underground world through a VR helmet. Everything was cool and extremely simple. All that remained was to come up with a name for the project. Bailey suggested naming the game War in the Network as a tribute to the artifact. The name was approved, and from then on, the game War in the Net was ready to be released. The description said that it had been in development for many years, that it was perfect, and that entry was free. In addition, there was no balance replenishment. After a few hours, the number of downloads, comments, and likes was 0, which was bad because there was really no time. Bailey said that to the east of the palace was the Luli district, and in the main palace was the ghost general Sha Na, who commanded about 500,000 soldiers, and his army was still growing. No one knew when he planned to attack. But if the main city disappeared, Lu Wu's soul would never be able to be reborn. This was terrible news because it was simply unrealistic to find a huge number of players in such a short time. At that moment, the first player logged onto the server because he wanted to check how accurate the description of the game War in the Network was. After all, they claimed to offer 100% immersion. The player's name was Wang Damian, and he was a professional Atlantis player with vast gaming experience and was ready to spot a fake right away. Van de Man materialized in the underground world and started the game. Soon he felt bloody rain dripping on his body, and it was a truly impressive effect that he had never encountered before. The guy even thought he had died from an electric shock when he touched his helmet. But then came the story of the great misfortune of Prince Bechi, who died saving many lives. And now the player had to go on a journey to regain the lost territories. Next, he was asked to choose his class. It could be a warrior, an assassin, or a mage. The young man calmed down, realizing that it was just a game that had started, but it was really very realistic. Lu Wu immediately understood that the game would be popular, but he was surprised because he couldn't find the healer class. This was the idea of the developers, who did not want to make a healer right away, as they were going to make money on it. Wang Damian chose the class of a stealthy assassin who lived in darkness and walked on the edge of a knife. The player immediately felt a surge of strength and improved agility. It was very cool, and the guy couldn't wait for the beginner mission to start. The mission for newcomers was to kill 10 wandering souls. The reward for this was 5 soul coins. He began studying the map and noticed that the route led to Ghost Mountain. Van Damme thought that wandering souls were weak monsters, so for a skilled player like him, the task would be completed in a matter of minutes. It was time to show off the special technique that the player possessed. The sounds and atmosphere gave him goosebumps, and the details in the game were indeed very realistic. The guy had to advance through the foggy terrain, not knowing where danger might come from. Despite the eeriness, the player told himself that it was just a game, and he was not just a player, but a real pro. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a huge creature appeared above the young man and sniffed him with pleasure, hoping to feast on his soul. It was a white dragon. Wang Daman was stunned with horror. He found it strange that monsters for beginners were so scary. They resembled bosses from other games. It was very cool and reckless. After repelling the first attack, the player reassured himself that it was just a wandering soul for beginners, and he was in the game, so nothing terrible would happen. But the dragon was annoyed that the player underestimated it, and, preparing to bite, rushed into the attack, opening its terrifying mouth. The wandering soul became angry, and the emotions were very intense, as if they were real. The player prepared to defend himself. After he repelled the attack, Wang Daman announced that he was a pro player, and that the monster was too weak for him. The monster ignored the guy, but sensed that humans had become powerful and decided to use a deadly blow. The monster's ghostly blow was very powerful because it was 2-stage. For beginners, this was serious, and the player didn't even have any skills. In the next moment, the equipment couldn't withstand the blow, and the player was knocked onto his back, left in his underwear. The equipment not only had durability settings, but also damage ratings. The Wandering Soul had only a 2% difficulty rating, so Wang Damian saw no reason to be afraid, and hoped to land one precise blow to end the battle. The player, encouraging himself, rushed into the attack, intending to deliver a worthy final blow, a knife in his hands. But at the last moment, the young man tripped over a stone and fell flat on his face, left without any life energy. The player died, and there were 3 hours left before his resurrection. Lu Wu and his assistant analyzed what had happened, deciding that they needed to adjust the strength of the equipment and reduce damage from the environment. The 3-hour respawn was long, but the assistant claimed that after dissipating, the soul returns to the body very quickly and can be severely damaged. Wang Daman couldn't believe he died on the first level. It was real and outrageous. Fortunately, no one saw it, otherwise he would have lost face as a pro player. What annoyed him most was the long pause before respawn. It was unclear why the game was free, because it was simply a treasure. He couldn't let anyone else succeed in the game before him. But the young man immediately announced a new, very real, cool game in the gaming community, and enthusiasts immediately rushed to try it, amazed by its realism, quality, and the fact that it was free. Everyone found the monster truly terrifying, and the game very realistic. The white dragon rejoiced at the fresh, delicious souls he wanted to devour immediately. The players immediately chose their classes and prepared to fight the monster for beginners. Amazed at the realism of the game and getting ready to deal with the first monster, Lu Wu analyzed what was happening, realizing that the players had adapted very quickly. The teamwork had reached a silent understanding, and the players themselves were satisfied, so it was safe to say that the game would be a success. It was very hot on the battlefield, and the players were so actively involved in everything that it was simply impossible to see anything. One of the players used a huge sword to damage the monster, and it was clear that he was really enjoying what was happening. The player destroyed the last wandering souls, and wanted to receive a reward for the mission to increase the power of the squad. The feeling of leveling up was completely different from other games. The level of the game allowed you to feel the strengthening of your body's characteristics, and it was just incredible. All the players agreed that the game was really cool, and that they could feel superhuman strength. And if their level continued to grow, that feeling would become even stronger. It was unreal. You could buy items with the coins you earned. At the first level, the items were pretty simple: a club, a healing potion, and a magic wand. The player bought an ogre club for 8 coins and was happy with his purchase. Having received a new weapon, he immediately felt stronger and announced that he would help other players clean up the souls in the village of newbies. The game developers continued to analyze the situation, estimating how many coins they would earn from the slain souls. In addition, a percentage would be charged for each purchase a player made in the store. The more they buy, the more the manufacturer gets. Players enjoy the game, and he enjoys the money. Everyone is happy. After that, Lu Wu admitted that Little Bei Li was indeed a genius. The Ghost Mountain was a tall cliff surrounded by fog and smoke. Above the mountain was a portal that constantly spewed lightning. At this level, the player had to kill an elite mob, the Evil Spirit, and all quest participants received additional coins. The players stood in anticipation, waiting to earn more coins in the mission, but they did not yet understand where to find this mob. But suddenly, the monster appeared before them and accused them of invading its territory, so now it was going to devour them. The Evil Spirit made a terrifying impression on the players. It was huge, with horns on its head, burning eyes, and enormous size. The most experienced player rushed into the attack. After analyzing the monster's behavior, the player urged the team not to skimp on healing potions, and to attack even at low levels. Lu Wu had doubts as he watched the game. Wasn't it too early for them to engage in battle with elite monsters? But Bei Li reassured him, saying that this group of players was stronger than expected, and low-level souls would not be able to stop them. Therefore, it was necessary to give the players a new incentive. Besides, this elite monster would drop a useful item. She was clearly enjoying what was happening and didn't want to reveal all her plans in advance. By that time, the Evil Spirit had already been practically defeated by this team of players. Its health was almost at 0. However, the players themselves were terribly exhausted and had run out of potions. They had almost destroyed the villain, but they were just a little bit short. The Evil Spirit could almost feel that he had won. Even though he had only one horn left, strength was gradually returning to his mighty body. Suddenly, Wang Damian, who had been sitting out the game for 3 hours, burst onto the scene, accusing his friends of trying to farm monsters without him. The player announced that he had arrived at the most critical moment to save his friends and delivered a hidden blow to the Evil Spirit's back. The blow proved fatal, and the villain was defeated. The players leveled up and felt a surge of strength and increased abilities. After defeating the monster, the game offered an elite item. This item turned out to be a small bead called the Ghostly Sphere, which could be sold in the store for 28 coins. The players did so immediately, and then set off on a new mission. Lu Wu himself ate the bead, although he did not understand why it was necessary. The taste was rather strange, and then his body seemed to light up, and the guy felt warm and comfortable. With the help of the bead, he strengthened and improved his body. Bei Li claimed that even though he was a direct descendant of Prince Bechi, his physique was ordinary, and such artifacts needed to be used to improve the heir's body. The young man was beginning to believe in what was happening. He liked the feeling of power and decided to try to attract more players so that he could avenge his ancestor and unite the underground world as soon as possible. After 12 hours of play, the players received a notification that they had to log out. This upset the guys, who were ready to continue playing and extend their time, even buying more. Lu Wu didn't understand why the girl had programmed a forced exit from the game, because there were many tasks created for beginners, and they had plenty to do. Bai Li insisted that it was necessary because their bodies were in the real world, while their souls entered the underground world. If the players stayed in the game longer, their bodies might not be able to withstand it. This was important for their further development. The completely exhausted and weakened player argued that there was no point in living if it was impossible to play War in the Net, and there was nothing in the real world but agonizing waiting. The next day, the players met in a cafe to discuss forming a team for the game. They had now abandoned all their previous games, realizing the potential of War in the Net. The first players had a big advantage. In addition, they wanted to donate, but they couldn't find a way. This showed that the creator of the game was indeed not short of money. There weren't enough soul coins in the game. You had to save them up first, and then spend them on additional purchases. One thing bothered Lu Wu. He searched through a bunch of websites but couldn't find a single advertisement for this game. This suggested that the creator really did have a lot of money. At that time, the game's creators were poor and ate steamed noodles while sitting on the floor, hoping for better conditions in the future. Lu Wu reassured the girl that soon they would have more players and would be able to afford other food and all kinds of delicacies. The young man believed that gaming companies made money from donations, so he suggested introducing this system into his game. But Bai Li was against it because coins in War in the Network are quite rare, and players have to work hard to get them. The main thing was to find a way to expand the audience so that more people would play. The young man was worried because he didn't have money for advertising, and a platform with high traffic was unavailable. After another bout of tantrums and tears from the girl, Lu Wu had an idea. He suggested joining a gaming event he had read about yesterday. It was a competition for the best new product, and the grand prize for first place was advertising on the platform's main page. What's more, the event was completely free. The partners quickly filled out the application and sent it to the platform's head office for review. Mu Qinshui, the platform's chief critic, was very skeptical about yet another trash game he had just tested. The next game in line was War on the Net. The critic immediately realized that this was not trash, but high-quality fraud, but still decided to enter the game and review it. After a while, he took off his VR glasses and realized that he had experienced a game of an incredible level. It was unreal. 12 hours later, the critic couldn't understand how he had lived without this game before. He gave it the maximum 10 points and noted its only drawback: the 12-hour game limit. Mu Qinshui immediately called his boss to report the discovery of this treasure. The new game was difficult to describe in words. It would definitely help the platform grow quickly and become #1 in the country. Wu Gui, the platform's president, was surprised by such a description from his most vocal critic and did not believe the assessment, as the game was modest in size. However, the president decided to play it anyway. After all, he had already tried so many games that it was unlikely that any game could surprise or satisfy him. Most likely, nothing like this existed in the world. After receiving the notification and standing on the first stage of the game level, he couldn't believe his eyes. He had never seen such a realistic game in his life. It was a masterpiece that would become popular. And the creators and producers of the game were still eating street food from paper plates. Bai Li cried bitter tears over another batch of carbohydrates because she didn't want to get fat, and they could only afford rice and pasta. Suddenly, a phone call rang that could change the future, as well as the couple's diet. It was the president of the platform himself, Mr. Wu, who wanted to discuss some issues with the owner of the game, War in the Network. The president had played the game for 12 hours straight, and if he hadn't been forced to log out, he would have continued. Now he wanted to contact the owner and gain control of the game. Lu Wu confirmed the possibility of a meeting and was ready to come to the company's office, but a surprise awaited him. The president of the platform personally arrived in a state-of-the-art car to intercept the game owner and prevent competitors from getting there first. Wu Gui got out of the car and introduced himself, causing the young man and his girlfriend to have a nervous breakdown. The platform president invited the young man to step aside for an important conversation. Lu Wu agreed but couldn't leave his younger sister, who hadn't finished her breakfast yet. Wu Gui immediately decided to appease the child and suggested moving to another place where they could find better food. Everyone has their weaknesses, so the plate of rice was left alone and the whole company went to another place. This place turned out to be the best restaurant. It was so prestigious that even rich people found it difficult to book a table. The children were given a luxurious table with delicacies and the highest class of service. The president of the platform, Wu Gui, asked who helped the children create the game. Of course, the young man could not tell the truth that he had simply used the artifact and instantly created the game. The president tried hard to find out the secret, but realizing that he should not intrude on internal secrets, he suggested drinking and telling the truth. He appreciated the game and liked it very much. The president wanted to buy it. Lu Wu understood that from the very beginning, the president would only be interested in buying the game, so he refused to sell it, explaining that the development required a lot of effort from the team, and they did not plan to sell it. President Wu was not greedy, but smart and pragmatic, so he immediately offered 10 billion. The young man's jaw dropped when he realized the magnitude of the sum. The bidding continued, and soon the amount was tripled, but the young man continued to insist that the team was not going to sell the game, because love and dreams are priceless. The president was upset by this turn of events. He did not expect that such a young guy could not be persuaded with money. But the guy turned out to be mature and far-sighted, far ahead of his peers. Then Wu offered to pay 100 million a year if the game was published only on his platform. The young man understood that the offer was very tempting, but he had promised Bei Li to avenge his ancestor and unite the world, so the number of players was crucial for him. If he accepted Wu Gui's offer, the growth of the audience would be limited. Therefore, Lu Wu rejected the offer but agreed to cooperate with the platform for 2 months on the condition that the game would be featured on the main page. The president was shocked by the guy's business approach. It was more difficult to deal with him because he took the initiative in negotiations. However, Wu Gui was confident that the game would be a hit, and regardless of the results of the competition, he offered a bonus. A graphics demonstration, which was the most expensive method of promotion and guaranteed to attract many new players. Lu Wu liked the offer, as the graphics demonstration was indeed an excellent method. Thus, the agreement was approved, and the men raised their glasses to a successful collaboration. After Bei Li had eaten her fill, it was decided to return to Lu Wu's apartment and continue working on the game. Previously, the prince had commanded 3 ghost kings and 10 ghost generals. After his death, the world was divided into 13 regions. Their territory was in the east, and the nearest one belonged to the ghostly general Sha Na. This general was a terrifying monster, capable of invading at any moment once the main city fell. The young man suggested striking first, and making the return of the territory from Sha Na's hands the primary mission. The young man also suggested that the minimum level for starting the main mission should be 15. Otherwise, the players would not be able to cope even with the ghost soldiers, let alone form a large-scale fighting force. Of course, NPCs can significantly improve the quality of the game. They are easy to create with an artifact, but how can NPCs be given intelligence so that they can act autonomously? Bei Li took on this task. She believed that the underground world was a place for living beings. It was possible to search for those who were born in the underground world and had not yet developed spiritual intelligence, and then use an artifact to reorganize their souls and give them new memories. After death, creatures would be randomly reborn in the underworld, and players could receive quests to find newborn souls and turn them into NPCs. The more such creatures there were, the greater the power. Collecting souls became a permanent task. It was necessary to find the initial souls born in random places and sell them in the store for 100 coins. Lu Wu used the artifact and made sure that the charm of the game was reflected in the computer graphics, attracting the attention of players. Bei Li suggested making a high-quality trailer that would shock players. The young man already had an idea and reassured his partner, saying that they did not need to hire a professional team and spend money on creating graphics. The world, from rivers and mountain peaks to flowers, was realistic. They just needed to use the artifact. Lu Wu used the artifact to gather and restore the former glory. The game's graphics were completely updated before our eyes and became perfect, attracting the attention of all players. After creating the real world of the game, it was time to focus on the main character. Soon, Lu Wu presented Prince Bechi in all his glory, a huge, muscular, handsome man with skulls, horns, and weapons. In short, with all the usual triggers. Bei Li was delighted with how quickly her partner had learned to control the artifact, and was amazed at the coincidence of the prince's appearance. However, the form could not last long, and it was time to take action. The army and a huge number of monsters were already approaching. The huge black dragon addressed Prince Bechi, believing that he was incapable of protecting the people and was going to destroy all the inhabitants. The prince replied that he was not afraid of empty words, and if the dragon wanted to fight, let him come against him. The warriors and soldiers were ready to follow their leader and win the battle. After the battle, the entire underground world was littered with mountains of corpses, over which ghostly soldiers rejoiced. Their leader, the ghost prince Bechi, declared that he was bored as he was dealing with trifles. The black dragon admitted that he had underestimated his opponent and that Bechi deserved the title of prince. However, the dragon had already exhausted his strength, and the battle was not yet over. He decided to destroy Bechi. The dragon opened its mouth, and a powerful stream of fire rained down on the prince, who ignored the flames and remained standing. The prince was ready to sacrifice himself, knowing that he could not defeat the dragon. He wanted the underground world to belong to its inhabitants. A huge explosion took both opponents away. The ghostly souls realized they had won, but the prince was no longer with them, and they did not know whom to serve now. Soon their attention was drawn to the sounds of a baby crying, echoing throughout the underground world. They found a small newborn with a soul that had just come into being. The prince was dead. "Long live the new prince," announced one of the ghosts, and lifted the baby in his arms, showing him to the other warriors. An important meeting organized by President Wu Gui was taking place at the platform's headquarters. Suddenly, the meeting was interrupted. Critic Mu Qin-shui was a little late. He had been invited to the meeting by the president himself, even though he was a low-level manager and did not usually participate in such meetings. After all, it was Critic Mu who discovered the game War in the Network. Everyone present was told about the new game and given VR headsets. The president asked the critic to show the game trailer. Mu Qin-shui had already downloaded the video, and the platform managers were able to evaluate the game. The reaction was simply incredible, from tears of happiness, joy, and emotion to cries of delight. The only desire that arose after viewing was to play the full version as soon as possible. Lu Wu received a phone call from manager Wu Gui, who did not expect the trailer to be ready so quickly. He said that the game had shocked everyone at the company. The graphics and sound effects were top-notch, but one thing was missing to make it perfect. He was referring to the atmospheric music that could be created by adding a high-quality soundtrack. Bailey agreed that they had indeed missed this point, and now needed to add some good music. But how could they do that if they weren't musicians? After all, creating thematic music would require hiring composers and paying a lot of money. Wu Gui didn't see a problem with this. The developers just needed to find a lyricist and a performer who could compose a beautiful soundtrack. Lu Wu decided it would be better to let players evaluate the game without music. That way they could play impartially and give an objective assessment. The platform president really liked this point of view because, from a realism standpoint, there really shouldn't be any music in the game. To make it feel like you're in an underground world, Wu Gui remembered that he wanted to show the guy the results of the game ratings. As a result, the game War in the Net received the maximum number of points and now occupied first place. Starting the next day, the rating was to be determined by the players, and War in the Net was officially launched on the platform. Lu Wu realized that it was time to create the first NPC, since the game would be officially presented and players would start rating it. Bailey recommended creating an NPC guide for beginners. Players could add their own thoughts and habits to it to enrich the game. The initial souls that players sold in the store could be used to create NPCs with souls and consciousness. This guide would not only guide players, but could even win fans among them. Lu Wu created a real heartthrob that absolutely all players will like. He will be able to attract female players, and they will bring their friends along. The NPC was endowed with a full soul. He was very strong and, as a conscious being, could even attack. But the creature approached the young man, bowed to him, and greeted him, saying that he was glad to meet the descendant of Prince Bechi. The young man did not argue, and agreed to carry on the prince's will, and to use the help of all his subordinates. The guide promised to do everything possible to help fulfill Prince Beichi's last will. Lu Wu summoned the artifact to instill a new personality and sense of responsibility. Once players reach level 20, they can pay 50 coins to create a guild. At this point, preparations for the game's launch were complete, and all that remained was to wait for the players. At the Tenlong Game Studio office, they eagerly awaited the results of the game voting. Company owner Li Tianxia had spent more than 7 years developing his game and was almost certain of victory. The manager said that a game had appeared that, unfortunately, scored the maximum number of points, and they only came in second place. That game was War in the Network. It was as realistic as possible, but it was quite small in size. Wu Gui thought that in a few minutes, War on the Net would be launched on the platform. The president of the platform himself was also eagerly awaiting the start. He received a call from his colleague at Tenlong, who was furious that some unknown game had surpassed him in the rankings. Li Tianxia might have accepted losing to a well-known game, but what had happened simply did not make sense to him. Instead of explaining, Wu Gui advised him to install War in the Network and try playing it himself. Li had no intention of wasting his time on such nonsense, as he had plenty of other things to do. However, human nature is curious, and soon the man decided to try it himself and see how interesting the game was. All the preliminary reviews were very positive, and critics gave it the highest ratings. It was obvious to Li that the developers had paid a lot of money for such reviews. Li Tianxia put on his helmet and, full of skepticism, immersed himself in the game. The underground world was very noisy today. Players wanted to start the game and didn't know which class to choose. According to the comments, the game was truly amazing, so a huge number of newbies lined up to get started. Tianxia was amazed by the realism of the technology. He dreamed of meeting the creators, realizing that they were truly talented. But soon his thoughts were interrupted by the voice of an old acquaintance. The president of the platform, Wu Gui, entered the game himself and suggested that his friend not stand there rooted to the spot, but quickly go hunting for monsters before they disappeared. Li Tianxia was stunned when he saw the monster, as well as Wu Gui, who was already racking up points. It wasn't fair. After all, he had just said on the phone that he had an important meeting and couldn't talk anymore. But then he went to play. Wu Goi suggested they hurry up and let Li deliver the final blow. Li didn't need to be asked twice. He drew his sword and rushed towards the monstrous creature, intending to destroy it and earn points. But at the last moment, the player was knocked back by a shield before he could deliver the final blow. A complete stranger with an axe in his hand smashed the monster's head, delivering the final blow. It was just a nightmare. No one had ever treated a player so despicably before. He realized that in this game, you had to act quickly and decisively. But before he could do anything, another player's sharp knife slit his throat. The game announced that he had been killed in the process, and now the resurrection and cooldown had begun. Li Tianxia was amazed by the game, even though he was an experienced developer himself. He also realized that not only he, but also Wu had been kicked out of the game in the same way. The number of players was growing rapidly and breaking all records. Moreover, even after dying in the game, some people still waited for resurrection and did not leave completely. It turned out that the game was really gaining momentum. Although it was still far from perfect, it was necessary to figure out how to attract even more players. It was known that General Shah had a huge army of soldiers and could soon invade the underground ghost world. Until then, it was necessary to attract as many new users as possible and form our own army. Once again, the president of the platform called the young man, complaining that he had been killed by some insignificant player during the game. He stated that he was not going to put up with this and immediately offered the young man money to buy himself extra lives. Lu Wu replied that this was not possible at this stage, but in the future, players would be able to earn coins for killing monsters. The young man currently only had 100 coins for personal use, and he offered to give them to the president as a gesture of friendship. Wu Goi was amazed that the developer did not control everything that happened in his own game. Wu Goi asked the young man to introduce him to the team that created such an amazing game as soon as possible. A few hours later, the weather in the Ghost Mountains was foggy and cool. Players Wu and Li lay in wait, waiting for the right moment. There were noticeably fewer players in this part of the world. Soon, they saw two players fighting a monster. One held a shield, while the other attacked the beast. The offenders watched this fight from the bushes, now waiting for the right moment. Finally, they decided that the time had come, and rushed into the attack to take their revenge. With swords in their hands, the players rushed at their opponents, intending to knock them out of the game. Wu Goi destroyed the guy with the shield with a sword strike. Li Tianxia, however, was not so accurate. The female player managed to avoid death. You'd be hard-pressed to find a more clumsy oaf. The girl indignantly declared that she didn't understand where these two jerks had come from, since she had been quietly playing the game with her partner. Li Tianxia said that they still had the advantage, and that the other players shouldn't worry. At that moment, the monster had already regained its strength, and was simply enjoying the speeches of these wonderful souls, who now belonged to it. Loud screams and curses rang out in the Ye family's house. Ye Shuer was furious. She needed to take revenge on some stupid players for kicking her out of the game. She called the butler and ordered him to invite her brother and his people. At the headquarters of the Wu Goi gaming platform, he decided to hold an emergency meeting and ordered all employees to gather in the conference room. The Tenlong Game Studio headquarters was also bustling with activity. No one left their posts. Ye Cheng and his people came to his sister at the first invitation, not understanding who dared to offend her. His sister said she would tell her brother everything, but first the butler had to bring the boxes. The girl explained that knives and guns were useless in this situation because she had been attacked in the game and then killed by a monster. To say that the guys were stunned would be an understatement. But Chung loved his sister very much, so he ordered his men to prepare, choose their specializations, and go after her. This is how the Guardian Angels Guild was created, headed by Zur and Chung, whose surname was Ye. In the game, they crossed paths with the Avengers Guild, consisting of President Wu Gui, company owner Li Tianxia, and their subordinates. The developers watched the battle in the game with interest. Although the guilds were not yet officially registered, two factions had already emerged, and a conflict had broken out between them. Until they killed each other, there would be no peace. However, the price of soul coins rose sharply because they could be used to increase one's power, and the developers became millionaires overnight. But soul coins were also very important to the developers themselves. They were needed to create Prince Bechi's army. Therefore, they could not sell them and were once again left without funds. A huge amount of soul coins was needed to restore Prince Bechi's palace. Although there weren't enough yet, the young man thought it would be easy to deal with. The young man decided to sell 500 soul coins to start with. To this end, he intended to use a combat artifact to pass himself off as an ordinary player. The young man chose to specialize as a mage. Initially, the mage was not particularly strong and, apart from chi energy, had no special skills. But Lu Wu had no intention of fighting. He just wanted to sell coins. The mage had enormous potential. As soon as the palace was restored, he would have access to a multitude of techniques and tricks. If a section for acquiring skills was added to the shop, The player's strength would grow not by the day, but by the hour. Then the current mage would surely reveal his potential. The young man took the form of a huge flying magical kite, received the player's coordinates, and set off for the meeting. Bailey noted with satisfaction that the young man was already confidently using the combat artifact. A few minutes later, somewhere far away in the mountains, in a gorge, there were shouts and arguments between the players. Suddenly, a stranger appeared among them and said that he was looking for Zur and wanted to exchange coins with her. The girl came out to meet him. She wanted to know who he was and why he was looking for her. He explained that he had soul coins that he was willing to sell to her. Zur was very skeptical of the young man's words, because he belonged to the class of mages, the weakest type of players. The girl couldn't believe that this stranger had as many as 500 coins, but she was extremely pleased to hear the news. She immediately figured out where he could have gotten them. It all seemed extremely suspicious. The mage decided to place the coins in the transaction column and offered her to see for herself. Seeing the number of soul coins with her own eyes, Zur felt truly happy and confirmed the purchase. She instructed her accountant to transfer the required amount, already thinking about what she would spend the coins on. Lu Wu was amazed at how little money meant to these people and how easily they could trust strangers. When asked where he got so many coins, the young man said that he had been very lucky in his soul collection task and had been able to get all the souls and exchange them quickly. The accountant announced that the money transfer was complete, and the young man could check his account balance. Bailey whispered to him that the money had arrived and he had not been deceived. The magician announced that he would not check because they had trusted him, and he, in turn, had also trusted them and transferred all the coins to Zur. After that, he thanked them for their cooperation and said that he would contact them again next time if new coins appeared. The girls were very impressed by this behavior because the magician received a huge sum and did not even bother to double-check. Maybe he was too rich, but their thoughts and dreams about a rich and charismatic guy were interrupted by the news that players from another team were lying in wait. These were not representatives of the Avengers Guild, but elite mobs. The elite mobs were demons on wolves. They were a truly terrifying bunch and had come to find out who dared to invade their territory. Lu Wu finally treated his girlfriend to a feast, buying all her favorite delicacies, because now they had a lot of money and could afford it. The young man said that when he left the ghost world, Zur's team was attacked by ghost soldiers. These horsemen were led by Shana. The young man was struck by the size of his army, but it turned out that as the number of players increased, so did the number of enemies. This was very good, and players needed to be given the task of exploring General Shana's territory. This would make players understand how things really stood, and encourage them to spend soul coins on their upgrades. Lu Wu immediately activated the combat artifact and set the access level for the task to no lower than rank 15. If weaker players went there, they would die immediately. High-rank players had no choice but to accept this quest, and there they would be able to fight the ghosts. Since players constantly respawn, they are ideal for exploring the lands. Once enough information was obtained from them, a further strategy could be developed. There were many players in the ghost world who tried to divide themselves among the guilds. They begged for their applications to be accepted and guaranteed to earn a lot of money. The Great Dragons Guild, led by Wang Damana, accepted all willing players, but preferably those with high levels. A player with the nickname Blade in the Soul approached the guide to get information about General Shana. The guide said that the prince of these lands, Bechi, had raised the general, but he had betrayed him. The general now had about 500 soldiers who had captured the Luli area. If you went there on a reconnaissance mission, it would be best to take care of your own safety. The Great Dragons Guild immediately decided to go on this mission. They planned to easily deal with the general's ghost warriors. Lu Wu noted that the Great Dragons Guild was indeed made up of real professional gamers, and they had already left on the mission. But the poor guide was unlucky. He was surrounded by female fans who showered him with compliments, trying to find out what he liked to do in his free time. It's great that the guide is so popular, but it's time to create a new NPC who will be a mysterious merchant wandering the lands of Bechi. Lu Wu will move him around randomly, and gamers will be able to buy rare items that are not available in the store. This will increase the enjoyment of the game. After that, the guy suggested going to see how the task of exploring General Shana's territory was progressing. Bai Li was a little worried about this, because the players were at odds with each other, and now they had to work together to fight a single villain. The young man reassured her, saying that all these issues would be resolved very soon. A camp of demonic horsemen had been set up at the junction of the Luli and Hades regions. Several players used stealth techniques to conduct reconnaissance and discovered that there were a huge number of soldiers inside the camp. Alone, the humans would not be able to defeat them. At that time, another guild that had appeared in the area was behaving very noisily, attracting the attention of the demon soldiers. It became clear that there was no time to escape, and that they would have to fight them in battle. And death would be heroic. The battle began. The players fought desperately and killed the mobs quite well. Half an hour later, all the high-level players were still able to fight. Although they suffered losses, the battle continued. The players were unable to cope, and it became clear that the Great Dragons Guild would not survive. Perhaps it was too early to take on such quests. If they kept losing, all their enthusiasm would disappear. At that moment, the Guardian Angels Guild, which had bought new equipment, approached the battlefield. Zuer had specifically exchanged soul coins for equipment, looked gorgeous, and was ready to lead her guys into battle. The Avengers also showed up, but it was strange because they were enemies with the Guardian Angels. Bailey was pleasantly surprised by this fact. Lu Wu watched the proceedings with satisfaction. He was as confident and calm as his ancestor. The guild leaders agreed to deal with their enemies first, and then resolve their issues among themselves. The battle continued with renewed vigor because 2 new guilds had joined the fray. Everyone wanted to punish the villains as soon as possible. Reinforcements were in place, and now the gamers were easily killing their enemies. Bailey said that, judging by all appearances, someone was watching the young man. The demon commander nicknamed Madman joined the battle. Once he was killed, the other warriors would automatically disappear. Zuer and her guild rushed into the attack without knowing who they were dealing with and paid for it with their lives, because the enemy was much stronger and beheaded the girl. Chung was furious when he saw what had happened to his sister. He called on all players to avenge her death. Players from all sides attacked the demon commander. They no longer cared who got the points or who delivered the final blow. They were driven by revenge. The players realized that they first needed to behead the commander and then deal with the rest. But the enemy was incredibly powerful, and his blows damaged the players' weapons. The representatives of the Avengers Guild also decided to destroy the commander immediately, rather than waste their time on minor demons. The madman sat on a huge monstrous wolf, and was confident in his strength. Treating his opponents as if they were mere ants, he easily dealt with all the players who attacked him and repelled their attacks so strongly that pieces of their bodies flew in all directions. Even Lu Wu and Bailey, who were watching the battle from their ambush, were hit. The young man realized that the gamers' camp had been completely destroyed with just one blow. He had clearly underestimated the power of the demon commander, since even the strongest group of players did not have enough strength to fight back. It turned out that the enemy could kill everyone. Perhaps it would be better for the players to explore other regions for now and avoid the territory of Liuli. Lu Wu created a screen recording feature that would help promote the game. Gamers would be able to post recorded videos, and people would learn about it. 3 days later, the exploration mission in the territory of Luli turned into a confrontation between 3 guilds. But thanks to this battle, the players gave up their hatred for each other and began to act together. The leaders of the 3 guilds even held a meeting and decided to unite to deal with the demon commander's camp. As a result, the price of soul coins rose again, and the screen recording feature increased the number of gamers. Due to the influx of new players, minor glitches were discovered. People tried to resort to hackers to quickly level up their characters. But they were disappointed. The game war in the net works from the human brain, and no hacks can help. The forum, where players shared their impressions, gave advice, and left useful information, was very helpful in the development of the game. Soon, a map was posted showing the distribution of monsters in different areas of the mountain range, drawn by hand. A gamer named Lo King used the screen recording function when developing the map. He hardly fought any monsters, but immediately started the game by exploring the world. Lo King's map featured areas that players were already familiar with. A player named One Hit One Kick had a very interesting fate. He used to work as a firefighter and lost his limbs while responding to a natural disaster, becoming disabled. He was very disappointed in life and in himself, and only after entering the game did he feel like a complete person again. When the man saw himself in reality and felt the presence of his limbs, these sensations were so real that he cried. It was wonderful. The game gave the man a zest for life and hope. Therefore, it was necessary to continue working on realism. Lu Wu decided that War in the Net did not necessarily have to be a game related only to wars. It could become quite thematic. For example, after completing the task of destroying General Sha Na, players could receive some additional options. For example, fishing enthusiasts could enjoy fishing in the Sea of the Underworld. And if gamers destroyed the King of the Rock Demons who lived on the Cliff of Despair, they could cultivate spirits in that location, because the environment allowed it. Players could have their own pets and teach them martial arts. Lu Wu was confident that his game world was full of possibilities, and that anything players could imagine could be brought into the game. As the map was gradually explored, more and more people entered the game, and the ghost world became accessible to everyone. The border between the regions of Liuli and Grados was packed with demon troops. Scouts reported to their commander that the gamers who had fought them a few days ago had been forming small groups and constantly looking for new ways to attack. The demons expected the gamers to be afraid of dying and to flee, but they kept pushing forward like parasites, and only a powerful blow from the demon commander, the madman, was able to stop them. The demons watched the part of the ghost world where the gamers lived and marveled at their powerful energy. They understood that this power resembled that of Prince Bechi in terms of its strength and quality. The gamers also watched the mobs and realized that their activity increased the demons' aggressiveness. But that was great, because they no longer had to run around looking for enemies. The enemies came to them. The gamers happily welcomed the demons who came to fight them. The players declared that they had come from Prince Bechi. The mobs understood that the gamers were provoking them, but were amazed by their courage and audacity. The mob commander had witnessed the rise and fall of Prince Bechi with his own eyes, so he ordered his servants to destroy the imposters. A battle began between the players and the demons. Bailey was very worried. She watched the dynamics of the game and noticed that the commander of the ghost soldiers had gone on the offensive, and the players were constantly dying. Lu Wu said that everything was part of his plan, and there was no need to worry. The battle continued desperately, and even the mob commander Mad joined the attack. The demons reported to their commander that they had already gotten rid of all the gamers, who turned out to be ordinary weaklings, and now planned to go to the abandoned city of Hades. The commander ordered them to continue the offensive and prepare to kill as many players as possible. However, this turned out to be not so easy, because the number of people gathering to join the game was simply enormous. The demon realized that there were too many opponents and ordered his troops to retreat, but then his subordinates noticed that there was nowhere left to retreat. They had been ambushed. The fact was that representatives of the guilds had united and were waiting for them on the other side. The old methods of endurance and tactics worked perfectly, and the start of the operation was announced. The gamers enthusiastically rushed at the demons because they had been waiting for this moment. They understood that there were many enemies, but that did not stop them. This was Lu Wu's plan. After losing the previous battle, the guild leaders met and developed a joint plan to confront the demon commander. It's not scary to have one enemy out of 10 people, but it's scary when they all unite against you. And even though the army of players couldn't destroy the general, they were definitely strong enough to take on the commander. The madman was surrounded and couldn't understand what was happening because the players had no formation and relied only on each other's support. Of course, ghosts have strength and ferocity, but fear was also present. The madman noted that the players were not afraid of death at all. Even with his advantage in strength, he could not withstand such numbers. The demon commander understood that if things continued in this vein, he would soon die, but he had no intention of dying at the hands of such weak parasites as these players. Izur approached him, saying that they had met again, but now she was prepared. The madman attacked with his magical energy, and one had to be extremely careful. At that moment, his gaze fell on the girl, and he remembered that he had killed her a few days ago. It was very funny. It turned out that the demon commander did not know about resurrection, and now he was in despair. The players were not afraid of death, because in 3 hours, they could be resurrected. The players already felt their power and tried not to pressurize, but on the contrary, to enjoy the battle and gain experience. The madman directed powerful energy from his eye, trying to harm the people in any way he could. This energy again led to a powerful explosion, and huge rocks and pieces of soil scattered across the playing field. At about the same moment, a notification came that the mission had been completed due to the killing of the demon commander, and his equipment was now available to high-level players. In addition, an accessory from the set of runic artifacts could be sold for 500 soul coins. The demon commander's equipment was immediately analyzed for value. Lu Wu did not understand what was happening, but the girl explained that she had created several hidden classes of artifacts that were used by the prince's fighters to create warriors. This artifact was called the Ninth Demon Energy, and with its help, it was possible to devise a plan for the runic warriors. Runic wars sounded very impressive, and the player's strength increased significantly after a fierce battle with the demon commander. Lu Wu hastened to learn about the talisman and the runic warrior, about which he had no information. A rune warrior is the system name for a special warrior created by Beiqi's first spell. To make it, the blacksmith had to smelt many materials. Although the process was complicated, the result in the form of the warrior's strength was impressive, and with the help of the combat artifact, it was possible to save on many procedures. Bei Li wanted to carefully study the rune and add the template to the artifact to create a hidden class of warriors. However, the girl did not know if a player who had received the talisman would ever appear and when he would admit it. It was unknown how quickly the player would put the talisman up for sale. It was a completely useless item for players, but it could fetch as much as 500 soul coins. The next day, a new quest was ready, which was to reveal the rune warrior, and Wang Damian enthusiastically took it on. But then he remembered that he was a representative of the assassin class, and therefore he urgently needed to become a berserker. All the berserkers had changed classes, and now it was unclear what would happen to the assassins. To gain supreme power, the berserker renounced his weapons and used himself as a vessel, carving the runes of heaven and earth that formed his body. His weapon became a glove with runes carved on it. Van Damme was simply happy. The power was very strong and explosive, shocking even its owner, the player. Death watched what was happening and was already close to the player. The attacks were affected by the defense and fell off the player like raindrops. In addition, he possessed tremendous speed, which gave him the advantage of Rune. The first task was to demonstrate the Rune Warrior, and after completing it, Wang Damen was amazed at how cool and invincible the Rune Warrior was. His perception of warriors on the battlefield was completely overturned. The update soon added a new class, the Berserker Rune Warrior, as well as a new NPC class change instructor named Master Chu. The game was constantly evolving and becoming more and more attractive to players. Rune Warriors turned out to be a very successful idea. Bai Li had no intention of stopping and began studying mage transfers. She planned to release 3 new directions in the near future. The clan curse system was good for control and destroying states. The demon system was effective when losing, and the soul monster system was useful in every formation. Bai Li still hadn't figured out the assassins. She needed additional material to change and create new professions. Each character and their characteristics had to be carefully worked out. It was impossible to act at random. Lu Wu sincerely thanked his partner, saying that she worked very efficiently and with great concentration. So the young man was ready to buy her delicious food to please and stimulate her work. In a dark dungeon near the coast, demons appeared before their king, and reported that the Sea King would continue to recognize the Lord's status as the ruler of Liuli if the offerings of yin spirits continued. General Shah did not understand why Prince Bechi did not dare to show his face and treated him like an ordinary hooligan. The messenger who crossed souls brought more bad news. The commander of the 3rd Ghost Cavalry had been defeated. The general knew that Madman was at the junction of the districts and did not understand how the demon commander could have died in such a safe place. The messenger added that not only the mad commander had died, but his entire squad. The general was furious. He did not want to believe that any of his own people were involved in this tragedy, such as the king of the rock ghosts, who had been suppressed immediately after the occupation of the Northern Territory. Someone else must be waging a secret war against them. The developers re-entered the game to correct the situation on the spot. After the introduction of screen recording, the number of players in the online war increased sharply, and the soul coins finally reached the 50,000 mark. Therefore, it was decided that it was time to officially restore Hades. And Lu Wu very quickly and professionally used the artifact for this purpose. Everything went wonderfully, and the reconstruction of the mansion was a success. The design was wonderful, and a repository of Buddhist canons appeared in the temple. The repository contained all the cultivation techniques and combat skills that Prince Bechi had collected throughout his life. Soon the repository will be available to players, and since this place was intended for cultivation, it was decided to name it the Cultivation Pavilion. Lu Wu suddenly felt the energy flowing out of his artifact. The creation of the Cultivation Pavilion began. The combat artifact and all the traditions of the original repository were preserved and observed, but transformed into a more convenient and suitable place. In other words, the Cultivation Pavilion became a kind of artifact itself. The humanoid phantoms were combat artifacts that turned everything into something convenient for players to use. All you had to do was click on the image to see a detailed description of the skill and a demonstration of it. It was very convenient, but expensive, so gamers would have to leave a lot of soul coins in the Cultivation Pavilion to learn something. Bai Li confirmed that without reaching a certain level, even with the necessary amount of coins, it was impossible to get in. After that, Lu Wu decided to carry out another renovation of the Cultivation Pavilion. It was necessary in order to simplify its use and improve the interface. The ghostly figures were labeled with their specializations: warriors, assassins, or mages. Then the 3 main zones were divided into 5 more levels of cultivation, from primary to royal level. The royal cultivation level became the most powerful and beautiful, and was only accessible to highly skilled players. Since there were so many players, parallel spaces were developed to accommodate a large number of players at the same time. They were more like separate servers. The first notifications about the opening of the Cultivation Pavilion were sent out, and immediately magicians rushed to improve their abilities. They were offered to learn how to control energy in order to summon soldiers, and were given all kinds of techniques to speed up the process several times over. In addition, there was the dark erosion of mages, the skills of dark thoughts, and it was possible to learn this technique. A mage haunted by evil thoughts could summon evil spirits, subdue them, and turn them into his defenders. The mages were happy because their class had been completely ignored before, and now they had the opportunity to learn something new, and that was wonderful. Bai Li was glad that with the help of her new partner, she had made so many players happy. Lu Wu decided that the changes were complete for now, and suggested that his partner go and improve the game. Now, players who had fully explored the entire area could access it at any point for teleportation. Thanks to the Rune Warrior, the Berserkers began to leave the abode of the dead in search of materials for teleportation. Every time they were resurrected, they had to retrace their steps from beginning to end. The first requirement before moving on to the Rune Warrior was the monster hunting stage. Next, they had to collect materials to create hands. Only then could they unlock the advanced career mode. This way, it was possible to recoup all the money spent on teleportation. In addition, the developers made teleportation not free, and each time players will have to pay a soul coin. It's not much, but with so many players, the developers will still come out ahead. Later, they decided to add a live streaming feature, which gamers had been requesting for a long time. This will allow dead players and those awaiting resurrection to watch others. Tests were conducted in the underground research hall of a Black Sea technology company. The manager happily noted that finally all the indicator lights were working perfectly, and it seemed that the development had been successfully completed. Virtual game warehouses, combined with nutrient solutions, successfully allowed players to remain unaffected for 24 hours. The board of directors of the Black Sea Technology Company reported on the successful outcome of the development, and now their virtual game warehouse was working successfully, as reported by the company's director, Chen. The company's task was to bring these virtual warehouses to market, and it was decided to find game sellers to collaborate with. The meeting was interrupted by the director's assistant, who announced that Company A had just announced the creation of a virtual warehouse at a press conference. The girl immediately turned on the broadcast of this press conference to show it to everyone present. In it, a journalist talked about the creation of a virtual game storage facility that had successfully passed a huge number of tests and guaranteed the stable operation of its warehouse. President Wu said that Company A had just found him, and he had decided to collaborate with them on the basis of the game War on the Net. For the physical safety of the players, a 12-hour gaming system had to be installed. But this served as a limitation to the growth of the players, and thanks to the appearance of the game warehouse, it was possible to develop much faster. The next day, a platform meeting was held at the company's office. Alice, a representative of the interested party, was present, and she did not understand why the discussion had not yet begun. Soon, Lu Wu appeared with his assistant, Bei Li, and the discussion could begin. Alice reported that their company was a leader in the field of virtual games, and had created a virtual game warehouse that would be much better than all previous inventions. After explaining the essence of her project, Alice announced their terms, which consisted of an annual payment of 20% of the game owner's profits. Everyone was very interested in the project, but the payment was too high, so the representatives could not make a decision on their own and waited for confirmation from their superiors. Alice said that the game warehouse would be at the disposal of the game owners and would attract a new wave of players. Developers would enjoy themselves and earn a lot of money. Lu Wu immediately stated that he was refusing this project, and now Alice wanted to know which company he was from, as he might simply not have understood what she was telling him. President Wu tried to slow down and explain to the young man that these were commercial negotiations, and if the terms of one side were not satisfactory, they could be discussed and possibly changed. Lu Wu stated that he would not change the specifics of the game, which he had developed so long and carefully, making it completely realistic. The presence of a warehouse was unfair to the game, and so he left the meeting. At this time, one of the players in the game decided to tame a corpse wolf, and the young man watched with interest. The player believed he was close to success and wanted to reduce the wolf's health to a minimum. The poor wolf was tied to a tree to lower its vital signs, but black energy continued to flow even into the immobilized animal. This black energy was spread by a representative of the monsters of the underworld. He destroyed the wolf just to prevent it from being tamed. Then he reached out his hands to the players and continued to spread his dark energy. Soon, the players found themselves entangled in dark bonds. The players themselves, as well as their weapons. This dark mist prevented them from breaking free, and soon the players turned into puppets caught in a trap. After that, the unfamiliar demon addressed the players, saying that now he would ask questions, and they were obliged to answer. The demon was interested in where the players came from and why the ghost commander had died. The gamer guessed that he was facing General Sha Na and demanded that his bonds be loosened because he couldn't breathe. The player did not understand why a simple mob had such power, and insisted that the players were not afraid of him, and demanded to be released so they could fight him one-on-one. The gamers threatened that if the ghost killed them, they would definitely take revenge when they became stronger again. This made the ghost laugh, because he knew that the players had no idea who he was, but he was Sha Na, responsible for storing souls. He believed that there would be nothing left of the players, and continued to tighten his grip. However, the ghost soon realized that he was unable to quickly defeat the players, which meant that they had some kind of powerful force protecting their souls. Therefore, he decided to destroy their bodies, and see where their souls would go next. He intensified his fog, and in the end, only the shells of the players remained. The ghost noted that there was not the slightest influx of soul power. In addition, the integrated souls disappeared without a trace. This did not correspond to any laws, because after the death of a creature, the soul begins to rotate. The power slips away and merges with the rest of the world. But the current situation was completely different. The players noticed a stranger standing in the distance. One of them suggested that the stranger resembled a hidden mob, a mysterious merchant. The players decided that they could strike it rich and become wealthy. Because the mysterious merchant had many soul coins and expensive goods, they approached the figure and asked if he was selling goods, demanded a discount, and wanted to look at the goods themselves. The stranger did not turn around, silently listening to everything they said. Then he turned to the players and asked if they knew the details of the ghost commander's death. The players did not like the smell coming from the stranger at all, but they thought that he simply possessed some unknown technique and did not pay attention to the black mist that began to envelop them. But then the stranger couldn't take it anymore and said that they were talking complete nonsense, so they had to die. The same changes occurred with this group of bodies and souls, and they also disappeared. But the ghost had an incredible idea, which he now needed to verify for himself. Lu Wu and Bei Li realized that Sha Na had gone on a reconnaissance mission and wanted to find out more about the messenger who crossed souls. The messenger who crosses souls is the highest position of the king and general of ghosts, responsible for storing and transferring souls. Each ghost king and general was assigned a messenger, and they had different strengths and weaknesses, and were skilled in sacrifices. The yin soul was different from the original soul. It was similar to a material, and could be used to create weapons and equipment. It turned out that the ghost king and general did not have much influence, and all the power was in the soul, which was almost impossible to kill. It could dissolve into the shadows at any moment. And now he had come to the abode of the dead. The ghost couldn't believe his eyes when he saw the reborn and rebuilt Hades. This could only mean one thing, that King Bechi had returned. But the ghost had seen the king's death with his own eyes and watched as his soul left his body. It was a vivid memory, and the ghost could not be mistaken. The ghost, who crossed souls, demanded an explanation and wanted to know who had appeared before him. Although he already guessed, he still couldn't say it out loud, because then the messenger's worst nightmare would come true. Before him, in all his glory, stood Prince Bechi. The messenger bowed respectfully to his master, saying that he realized his mistakes and was ready to die if it would help to fix everything. The prince could not allow the messenger to find peace so easily after his betrayal by simply dying. The messenger was ready to atone for his sins and do whatever the prince commanded. He promised to help the prince regain all his lost territories and glory. But he did not believe that this was the real Prince Bechi, because the latter would never have let the envoy go. Bechi confirmed that the murder of the ghost commander was the work of his men, and that the messenger himself would be next. But then the ghost attacked the prince, saying that he did not believe in his existence, and that someone was most likely just pretending to be Prince Bechi. Lu Wu said that he was not a prince, but that the blood of Bechi flowed in his veins and he must inherit this land. Bei Li unexpectedly bit the guy's hand, saying that the messenger would have to confirm the presence of his master's blood. And indeed, the ghost felt the familiar blood. He recognized the overwhelming power of the lineage and agreed that he was facing a descendant of Prince Bechi. After that, Prince Bechi demanded that the messenger who crossed souls surrender or die. Before answering, the messenger asked if the beings who called themselves players were human. Bechi. If these players were destroyed, their souls would not disappear. The person who created them had mastered the law of reincarnation, and the messenger realized that he was facing a very powerful being, for even Prince Bechi did not possess such power. The young man's patience was running out, and he asked one last time what choice the messenger would make. The ghost knelt and said that Du Yan's subject welcomed his new master and would be loyal to him, just as he had once been loyal to Prince Bechi. Dark forces were gathering on the coast of the sea in the Luli area. The ghost returned from reconnaissance and reported to the general. He found the remains of a tree demon in the camp and believed that it was he who, together with his people, had decided to encroach on this area and move General Sha Na. The general sent a messenger to the Sea King to confirm his agreement to make sacrifices, but it was necessary to simply wait until the general broke through the Ghost King's kingdom and captured the northern territory. Lu Wu, sitting at home, came up with new game bonuses to appease players who were asking for a new game platform to be launched, but this was not possible at the time. At this time, gamers in the game made their way into the general's territory and began a live broadcast. The Sea King began to emerge from the sea, calling General Sha Na to battle. The players were amazed by the mere sight of the Sea King, Poseidon. Poseidon really did look impressive, and the players hoped to just stand aside and watch a real battle between mobs. Poseidon continued to shout at the top of his lungs, calling on General Sha Na to come out and respond. The general personally appeared before the Sea King, not understanding why he was making such a fuss and what he wanted. The huge, ferocious general demanded that the Sea King not get carried away. The situation was such that the villains themselves were confused and did not understand what was going on between them and why they were so fierce towards each other, while someone else was just pitting them against each other. The general accused Poseidon of invading his territory without permission and daring to look him in the face. Poseidon called the general a nobody compared to Prince Bechi. The general promised to roast the Sea King and get rid of all his assistants. Poseidon warned that it was impossible to refuse his offer and was ready for battle. The general did not understand why the messenger did not confirm that Poseidon's terms had been accepted. A misunderstanding arose. The general tried to explain himself to the Sea King, but the latter no longer wanted to listen to him. The opponents came face to face, radiating hatred for each other, and it was clear that the battle would be epic. The general tried to say that he had not rejected Poseidon's offer and was ready to sacrifice souls to him every year, but that there was no need to pressure him. Poseidon thought the general was mocking him and refused to listen to any more excuses. The opponents used all their strength and skills to harm each other, and soon General Sha Na admitted that Poseidon was much stronger. Poseidon once again said that the enemy should not hide behind messengers, because they had refused his offer. The general realized that the envoy Du Yan had turned against him and deliberately conveyed the wrong answer. The general acknowledged the envoy's disobedience and asked Poseidon not to quarrel, explaining that he was now personally willing to pay souls annually. Poseidon accepted this answer, but demanded that the souls be destroyed, because the king of the sea remembered how weak the general had been during the lifetime of Prince Bechi. Barely restraining himself from insults, the general confirmed that he accepted the Sea King's proposal. To say that the general was angry would be an understatement. He promised to destroy the messenger and ensure that he would never be reborn. Lu Wu used the messenger to pit the villains against each other, hoping that they would at least maim each other. But it turned out that the general was much weaker than the Sea King, and was even willing to humiliate himself in order to survive. Bechi confirmed that Poseidon was very powerful, and he fought Prince Bechi several times. Of course, the prince was far superior to the Sea King, because he had simply crushed him to the ground several times. Poseidon is very powerful, but he lives in the sea and can only be considered the ruler of a certain area, so he is not able to rule over other lands. Even if he easily defeats the general, he will not dominate the lands, but only the sea area. And in the sea area, there is also the False Sea. The main ruler of the False Sea was Banji. He is so powerful that, according to rumors, even the prince did not consider him an equal opponent. It was decided to wait until the Luli region was captured and then form a naval fleet. Otherwise, if Poseidon went, there would be nothing to oppose him. Bechi was also ready to think about it. But later, because now she was dealing with the library, where she found many amazing drawings, including the design of the ghost ship. This ship had lived at the bottom of the sea for many years and was capable of absorbing only the spiritual materials of heaven and earth. It transformed souls and evolved them. Even if the ship was completely destroyed, it could be restored by absorbing a large amount of spiritual materials. This was very convenient for gamers. When the time comes, it will be possible to create the original ghost ship according to the blueprints and sell it to the player, who will then upgrade the ship themselves. The project is very expensive. It will require 500,000 coins, because many items in the library are filled with the power of the soul, and additional energy is needed to repair them. After hearing this, Lu Wu suggested opening an auction house to make it easier for players to find the items they need in the search engine, as well as to sell unnecessary attributes. The girl really liked the idea, and after working through the night, she found the killer's direction of movement. A relic of the Sun Clan's ancestral curse, found by a player. The weapon looked worn, but it was a clan relic and the killer's main attribute. The Sun Clan of the ancestral curse was once a powerful race in the lands of Bechi, and, according to rumors, was connected to hell. Each of their people was a natural-born killer capable of summoning demons. This clan killed indiscriminately, harmed ordinary people in the underworld, and openly insulted the prince, but was then suppressed by the army led by the prince and has since disappeared from these lands. Bei Li bought an old worn knife from one of the players, and now she had to go to hell to post an announcement and then show the killer. An announcement appeared on the server about the damned who rejected religion, possessed deadly power, and could summon demons. Their weapon was a dagger. To become cursed, a player had to reach level 30 and possess the assassin class. It was possible to summon the Night Ripper, who became a guardian for half an hour, increasing damage. The next path to hell is number 2. Abi, a huge, powerful ghost assassin. The player could summon Abi and gain the ability to fly for a minute, as well as choose a specific area as the main target for attack. The last path of hell was the wise Hosheng, who could be summoned for a minute, and was capable of inflicting enormous damage on the selected target. A practitioner of the curse could master 18 demonic forms in the realm of hell, each of which had a different level of difficulty and malice. new requirements for changing professions were introduced. One of them was a scarlet essence. The minimum level of an assassin player had to be at least 30, and after accepting the task of changing professions, it was necessary to kill any monsters, including players, and collect a huge amount of blood essence to open the path to hell. Sources of cursed power were also developed. It was necessary to find them all and give them to a mob that could engrave the curse, after which the second stage was completed. The developers racked their brains over new options. Apart from the Night Ripper, assassin players were indifferent to other methods of advancement. At this stage, the profession change feature was already in full swing, while hidden features remained on the sidelines. There was a need to repair the Spirit Room, a place used by Prince Bechi to store defeated enemy generals and their souls. It was a huge sacrificial building. Among these heroic spirits were several very talented warriors, and their legacy could be completely absorbed by a combat artifact. Several random quests could be launched. After completing them, the player would receive the power of inheritance. At the headquarters of the Black Sea Technology Company, another meeting was held to develop a promotion strategy. The secretary reported that, according to news from the platform, the most powerful game developer had not accepted the company's terms. Perhaps this company would be able to cooperate with Black Sea and finally use their warehouses. The game War on the Net was again short of coins. The opportunity to earn them was great, but consumption was also enormous. Therefore, many game features needed to be expanded, and there were still not enough coins. Suddenly, there was a phone call from Director Chen, who hoped that his virtual game warehouse could collaborate with the game. Director Chen confirmed that the promotion with his company was mutually beneficial, and that there would be no fee for its use. The company was ready to pre-install the game as built-in software, with no special download required. Lu Wu agreed to work under these conditions, realizing that the virtual game warehouse contributes to the stability and growth of players, and could be a good way to promote the game. At this time, one of the popular players fell into a pit, the difficult tomb of Bai Mei. The player fell in and turned on the broadcast. Bai Mei is a type of spirit beast unique to the land of Beiqi. The name meant, a very desirable and noble creature. When the life of this creature comes to an end, it seeks a secluded place to leave its life legacy. A berserker named Sun Qi found himself in a desperate situation. There were only smooth walls around him, and he couldn't get out. He even tried to kill himself, but the green light penetrating through the walls healed his wounds every time. Lu Wu, using the nickname Super VIP, wrote to the player, telling him not to waste his strength and to follow his advice. The player decided to take advantage of the help, as he had already run out of ideas. Sun Tzu cut his arm with a sharp sword, and bright red blood gushed out in a powerful stream. While the wounds were healing, the player put his hand against the stone wall. His palm seemed to stick to it, and the wall began to suck out the blood. The player realized that he could finally die. Suddenly, the ghost of the deer appeared in the grave where the player had fallen and saturated him with life energy. His health points rose again. A notification informed him that the player Sun Tzu had received a new specialization, Bai Mei. It was very impressive, and everyone envied him. Replays of his live stream made it to the top. In addition, Sun Tzu received the spiritual specialization of the beast Bai Mei. It looked quite funny, but had high professional characteristics, and its blood could heal. Changing professions in this way depended entirely on luck. Other players who wanted to change careers in a similar way could inherit it, but the probability was low. As a low-level player with no skills or money, he could only rely on fighting monsters to slowly improve his equipment. Now, everything was different. With this hidden profession, he could take his place among the high-class players, but soon fell into the trap set by the unlucky hunters. They thought they had caught a corpse wolf, and that would be the end of their troubles. Even when they realized that it was not a large wolf, but a dog, they still decided to tie it up. The dog continued to bark, trying to show that he was a player, but the bandits wanted him to be scared like a real cowardly animal. Bailey adjusted the game settings to instill fear in the animal. It worked perfectly. The dog began to bark with renewed vigor, realizing the danger. Manager Alice received information about the game War on the Net and its developer Lu Wu. The girl clearly understood what needed to be done. She was informed that the individual who refused to cooperate at the last press conference had signed a contract with the Black Sea Company. It was necessary to immediately block the game War on the Net on the gaming website, as well as in the country, and threaten other players with consequences if they refused to cooperate. In the abode of the dead, the developers discussed the fate of the player who had received Bai Mei and become a puppy. He was saved by an outside player who entered the game specifically for this purpose. But the young man sensed the approach of the messenger of souls, so the conversation about the puppy was postponed. Lu Wu took on the game appearance of Prince Bechi and met with the messenger, who was happy to welcome the lord. The messenger reported that he had followed instructions, returned to the general, and deceived him with the branches of a tree-like demon to divert suspicion from the players. After that, the messenger went to Poseidon and lied to the Sea Lord, saying that the general had rejected his offer. He did everything by the book and got rid of the spirits by sealing them in a ball and giving it to his master. However, the messenger was exposed, and now he would be happy if his master would take him in and hide him. The sphere with the souls was a remarkable find, and did an excellent job of collecting spirits. The master thanked his subordinate for a job well done and gave him a reward. Du Yan was overjoyed. For the first time in thousands of years, he had experienced something like this. Now the messenger could manipulate spiritual power and increase its potency. Unlike players, it is not difficult to increase the messenger's power because he has been cultivating it for many years. It was easy for the developers, but for Du Yan himself, it was no small feat. After that, the Lord announced a new task. He ordered the Messenger of Souls to find refuge in the Ghost King's Rock to find out about the relationship between the Lord of the Ghost Rock and the General, as well as to understand the current situation. As a gift, the Lord gave a spirit pearl to be presented to the Lord of Ghost Rock. When the servant set off to carry out the task, Lu Wu wanted to give the pearl to the messenger, but Bei Li made him change his mind. The girl convinced him that in order to move forward and open the teleportation, the power of the soul was needed, and the sacrifice was the Yin's soul. Simply put, it is impossible to directly build a portal in certain areas of the abode of the dead. One must sacrifice a Yin's spirit to create a passageway. The sacrifices for construction amount to 150,000 Yin spirits. This path is hellish, forbidden, with many levels where demons will be born. The idea was awesome, and it was decided to start construction immediately, as it suited the players for leveling up, especially assassins. Lu Wu had to release all the Yin spirits from the combat artifact. Soon, huge black masses gathered above the young man. Next, the information had to be mapped out, which was done by Bei Li. Soon everything was ready for the sacrifice. Lu Wu was about to call his girlfriend back as soon as the situation became suspicious. But suddenly something distracted him. Bloody energy began to gather around the girl. Lu Wu struggled to push away the hands, which actually belonged to one of the oldest gods of the underworld. Bai Li used the ancient language of sacrifice to summon the god's remaining consciousness. This god agreed to participate. Otherwise, the passage would not have been successful, because he remained the only god of the Hell Path. In the future, it may again be necessary to appeal to the deity, because all forbidden areas contain the remnants of the consciousness of the ancient gods. Bai Li admitted that she had never actually been to the Hell Path, but she really wanted to go there. It was dangerous, but the girl wanted to take advantage of the concentrated energy and hide her identity by joining the team of players. She promised that everything would be fine. The server informed the players about the opening of the Hell Path, and everyone was very pleased. The mob gave out instructions on how to copy. Yishuer and her friends chose Hell's Path, activated teleportation, and went to the Forbidden Zone. Everyone loved Hell's Path. It had a creepy atmosphere, but the girl announced that no one should touch anything and should look around carefully so as not to miss any valuable materials and treasures. The players happily explored the area, even though they paid for it with their blood, which spilled drop by drop. Behind the magma, a cave was visible, inside which treasure was most likely hidden. Inside the cave, the players continued to look around warily. It was hot outside and cold inside. As the head of the guild, Azure had to appear cheerful and brave, although in reality she was terrified. She tried not to give in to her fear so as not to lose her authority. A terrifying sound rang out, but it turned out to be her brother trying to open an unknown tomb. Her brother said he hoped to find treasures in the tombs. Soon, the whole group was busy breaking and destroying sarcophagi, but they found nothing. Everyone was exhausted and worn out. Bai Li, who had sneaked in with the players, decided to make a hinged lid and planned other changes. She got so carried away that she didn't notice the whole group had left. The players realized that it was impossible to get the treasure, and all they could do was remember the location and wait until they had enough strength to open the coffin. At that moment, one of the female players reported that she had found 3 stone altars. However, they were as solid as sarcophagi. One of the players suggested that the jug contained old wine, as was the case in his grandmother's village. At worst, it could contain the remains of ancestors. Zhuer ordered everyone to leave and wait until they had regained their strength, spending their time exploring other places so they could return here later. Bai Li knew that this was her chance, and while the players were gone, she could quietly open the stone altars. A few minutes later, Xuer's group found something interesting. The players saw other gamers, one of whom had a huge dragon egg, red and scaly. It became clear that they would have to deal with the first boss on this level, who would want to take the egg. The players ran as fast as they could, but the enraged dragon, burning everything with hellish flames, pursued them closely. The Guardian Angels Guild realized that they couldn't defeat the boss at this stage and rushed into the cave to hide. Unfortunately, the unfamiliar players with the dragon egg also rushed into the cave, and the dragon, unable to advance deeper, got stuck in the doorway. Zhuer decided to take action. She held a knife to the player's throat and demanded that he give her the dragon egg. The young man said that it was useless, since dragon eggs cannot be taken into personal space. Otherwise, the players would have done so long ago. But Zhuer refused to listen. She believed that the guy had gotten them into trouble by running up with the egg, so she stabbed him with a knife and began to examine the egg herself. The fire dragon was still outside, waiting to come out. In any case, death awaited them. But then the egg cracked, and a cute smiling little dragon flew out of it. It became Yeshuer's personal pet. It was very cute and unusual, but the little dragon looked weak, and its cultivation seemed troublesome and time-consuming. The girl's heart was melted by hugs and kisses, and Zhuer agreed to raise the foster child to make him a good dragon. At this time, Lu Wu was busy creating a portal in his apartment. Soon, his assistant returned and announced that it was time for the dragon egg to appear. She participated in the game and used the combat artifact. The pets were still in their infant stage and didn't understand anything, so Bei Li was able to seal them with the artifact. Almost all of the pets were sealed, which caused some difficulties. The fire dragon was still at the beast spirit level, with an average rank. Lu Wu praised his assistant for the game updates and announced that he had set the cost of resurrecting pets at 30 coins, considering it an excellent way to make money. The girl was upset. Initially, they wanted to revive the prince and the entire region with the help of an army of players, but now conflicts between players were becoming more frequent. They needed to be united to create a single army. Lu Wu had also thought about this, but the players were different, and it was unrealistic to unite them completely. They needed something to rely on. So the guy developed a way to help them let off steam. The idea was to build a huge battlefield where all guilds could register to compete for guild power. The goal of the battle would be to capture the flag. A flag would be placed in the center of each city, and any guild controlling the city could convert the empty flag to their own. It was a kind of large-scale competition for power, which began with a siege in the early stages and ended with the defense of the city. At the end, the best guild would be chosen. Bai Li thought the idea was wonderful, but creating this entire competition would require a tremendous amount of energy from engineering structures, and it would take a long time. Lu Wu was happy to tell his partner that they had accumulated 200,000 soul coins, so they could start building the spirit room right away. Soon, the game announced the opening of new professions and research. However, the number of participants was limited. One of the new professions was Sun Arrow. The spirit room was full of different heroes, and Lu Wu wanted to choose someone else, but Bei Li insisted on the archer, who was a courtier of Prince Bechi. The Sun Archer was once #1 at the prince's throne. His archery skills were the best in the whole country, and his strength almost reached that of the Ghost King. However, in the battle to destroy the clans, an order was given to attack Archer and kill him. The death of the Sun Archer greatly saddened the prince, and he became helpless. Later, the prince placed the archer's spirit in the spirit room, so that future generations would honor his heroic spirit. To use the greatest power, the player must master the essence. But since war in the net is the real world, archery was not available to everyone. Lu Wu used a combat artifact to build a training ground, begin trials, and select the 10 best players worthy of inheriting the heroic spirit. The next day, targets were set up on the training ground, and the number of applicants exceeded 25,000. In the first round, they had to shoot from a distance of 50 meters. Ye Cheng was one of the applicants. In the second round, the results were also almost perfect. The results of the third day amazed everyone. The hits were among the best. The young man took first place and realized that he was a true genius, although he had not realized it before. After the qualifying round, the player gained access to the attributes panel, where he could see detailed information about his career, undergo professional training, and become the heir to the first archer. The Sun Archer was obsessed with archery and trained for decades. Only after realizing the truth in his heart did he achieve enlightenment, prolong his life, and become the #1 player. In addition to his bow and arrows, the archer possessed eagle eyes. His visual abilities were highly developed, and he could adjust the focus of his pupils. Each shot consumed 1 sun breath, as well as additional energy, which was restored every 3 seconds. The archer possessed the ability of solar dispersion, which allowed him to release several arrows at once, as well as a sliding step to dodge attacks. The arrow of destruction combined the solar power of the entire body. After reaching a higher level, it was possible to move on to the second stage of this profession. Ye Chen changed professions and gained 3 skills, but he was still worried when he thought about it. The player prepared to shoot the bow, because he had successfully passed the selection and believed in his genius. However, after shooting all his arrows, Ye Cheng did not even hit the target once. Hitting the target proved impossible. The player failed completely. He realized the seriousness of the problem and on top of that, he had run out of arrows. After much thought, the young man realized that changing careers is serious work, and if you don't have talent, you won't succeed. Now Ye Chung was ready to return to his previous profession. It was hot in the Luli area of the underworld. General Shah was tearing his hair out and couldn't calm down. The envoy Du Yan had dared to betray him and forced him to humiliate himself before Poseidon. At that moment, a servant appeared and reported that there were complications with the messenger's capture. The ghostly messenger of souls informed the general that Du Yan had taken refuge in the rock of the Lord of Ghosts, dedicating all the yin spirits to him. This news greatly surprised the general, especially the information about the yin spirits. Du Yan had escaped, taking all of the general's yin spirits with him. The general had recently promised Poseidon that he would pay them, so the situation was dire. Poseidon and the Lord of the Ghost Rock were much stronger than the general. The ghostly messenger of souls suggested that the general change sides, as it was unsafe to remain here, and later a detailed plan of action could be drawn up. The general agreed that at this stage it was not a bad option, and almost the only one. But he was concerned about the fate of the Luli region. The ghostly messenger of souls reassured the Lord. When the general made his breakthrough, he would rule all the lands of Prince Bechi. The general also believed that this would be the case. All that remained was to wait 10 days. At that time, rain was pouring down on the city, washing away everything in its path. Two men under an umbrella discussed the situation in the game, talking about the guardian angel guilds and the dragon egg. A homeless man overheard their conversation. He rushed after the guys and asked where the fencer they had just been talking about was. The guys didn't want to talk to the dirty ragamuffin, so they said they were talking about the game War on the Net. After that, the stranger retreated. Lu Wu was developing new mobs to make the game more intense and interesting. He came up with a group of chefs, as well as an old man with a goatee who would teach players how to gather herbs for making poisons. The young man thought everything through very carefully, seeing this as the key to fulfilling Lord Beiqi's last wish. He tried to attract as many new players as possible. A phone call informed him that the game War on the Net had taken first place at the end of the month. Wu Goi reminded the young man that it was time to think about the soundtracks. He was ready to help solve all the difficulties associated with this. Lu Wu did not want to invest money in the process, but there was no other way. The music had to be recorded. It became clear that specialists would have to be hired, which would cost a lot of money. Bailey suggested setting up a fund on the forum to raise money for songs, as well as developing a costume change feature to attract fashionistas. The young man did not listen to her, as his attention was drawn to a strange duel in the game. A level 0 player challenged a level 26 berserker. It looked ridiculous and suicidal. The 0-level fencer continued to provoke the player, who refused to play with such a weak opponent. Finally, he managed to provoke his opponent, who accepted the challenge. The battle began. What should have ended in 2 seconds turned into a worthy battle. The players were evenly matched, striking blows and dodging hits. A player named Mu couldn't understand how this was possible. This weak fencer had just managed to land a dozen blows on him, while the other guy hadn't touched him once. The player realized that he was still alive thanks to his high level of skill and equipment. Initially, he had planned to spare his opponent and not use his skills, but now he decided to fight with all his might. The player activated his slanted edge and rushed at the fencer, hoping to kill him with this blow. The guys clashed in battle. At that moment, there was some kind of disturbance in the spirit room where the inheritance was kept. A few seconds later, the fencer received a notification that he had killed a player named Mu Junge, who had described his opponent as an ordinary and boring fighter. Soon, a congratulatory announcement appeared in the game that a player named Ao Jiang had grasped the heart of the sword and received the secret skill of 10 magic swords. This skill made it possible to compensate for a lack of talent with a sword that could be supplemented from 1 to 10. The developers watched with surprise as the 0-level fencer came to challenge the next lucky player. Bailey knew that this player had inherited a heroic spirit, and she could use the connection between the heroic spirit and the combat artifact to see what was happening. On the border of the Dragon Kingdom, the battle was already coming to an end, and it was clear that one of the opponents was losing. The stranger said that a long time ago, in a duel with his father, he accidentally killed him. The player agreed that it was his fault, and now he understood the desire for revenge. However, the player's sword skills were still too poor, and even if he trained for many years, he would still be weak. The player said that he did not need talent for revenge, practiced fencing, and even abandoned his family because of it. Therefore, he would now kill his opponent. The player believed that his sword skills were still unstable and that if the battle continued, it would be the end of his life. Although the player was blinded by the sword, he had already fallen into madness. However, there was still time to reconsider. In the end, this battle ended with the death of his stubborn opponent. The young man looked into the past and realized that this man had a serious past. But now he was just a zero-level player with no special skills, so it was unclear how he had dealt with the berserker. The only assumption that could explain this was that this man had actually practiced. And since the underground world really existed, it turned out that his skills were sufficient. This information struck the young man, and he wondered why he had never seen cultivators before. Due to the era of decline, cultivators still exist, but they are very rare, and it is possible to live a lifetime without ever encountering them. Now they have appeared because of Prince Bechi's life energy artifact. Lu Wu was glad that there weren't actually that many cultivators, because he didn't want to become their target. The girl reassured him and said that it was not a bad thing for them that cultivators were becoming players, because those who became players would never be enemies to Lu Wu. The soul of a player is already marked with the sign of a combat artifact, and if they betray him, the young man will be able to return their souls to the artifact to be erased. This was a very important point in the prince's plan, which he followed when creating the artifact to form an army of the undead, because he wanted to make sure that no one would dare betray him. It turned out that if the young man was successful, he could become practically the ruler of the world. Luvo unexpectedly asked his assistant about her past and whether she had participated in the development of the artifact, thereby gaining the complete trust of Prince Bechi. The girl did not want to lie, but she did not want to tell the truth either. The young man sensed this and did not press her. This touched Bailey deeply, because no one had ever been so sensitive and gentle with her before. She promised that she would tell the young man the whole truth, and that her fate was now completely tied to him, even if the whole world turned against them. A collection of themed songs for the game was created. Lu Wu offered a prize of 1 million for the creation of a collection of themed songs, but he was sure that players would prefer 3,000 coins, so he was able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Get the collection of themed songs and increase the value of soul coins. In the comments, users really hoped to receive soul coins in case of success. They were not interested in anything else. Music students gathered in the auditorium of the music university. A student named Balloon wrote a song and asked his friends to help him improve it. The guys were very surprised by this request, because their friend had recently become obsessed with the game. But Loon confirmed that he had written the song specifically for the game he was playing. His classmates did not refuse him, and the song was recorded exactly as the musician had conceived it. Lu Wu continued to develop new characters and locations. He did this to the music coming from the tape recorder, which caught the attention of Bailey, who highly praised it and offered to give her the grand prize. Somewhere far away in the mountains of Katsido, the player wandered into the mountains because his father, who was now a successful business magnate, had once ended up there completely by accident while testing a flight in a wingsuit. At the top of the mountain, his father met an outstanding man and, thanks to his advice, achieved everything in life. Guyu hoped to also meet this mysterious stranger, who, according to rumors, was already over 120 years old. The man greeted the young man, and it turned out that he was the famous Ming. Of course, it was hard to believe that this man was over 100 years old. Ming said that the sudden appearance of the young man's father many years ago had saved his life. Ming said then that he would help twice, once when he made the man noble and rich, and the second time now to his son. Guyu said that his father considered him untalented, and that he only played games, and that he had come here so that the master could help him discover the truth. The master immediately noted that the young man's character was different from his father's, and that if he inherited the family business, he would surely lose it. The master promised to use the 5 ghosts luck technique to pray for the young man and increase his wealth. Under the protection of the 5 ghosts, the young man's financial luck would flourish, and now the master decided to fulfill this wish so that there would be no more worries in his heart. Suddenly, huge powerful energy flows rushed in, and the master summoned all the energy. The young man realized that his father wasn't just telling stories to trick him. He was truly a master who knew how to use supernatural powers. Ming summoned the 5 ghosts of fortune. A huge dragon from the first level of the game appeared before the young man. He was terrified, realizing that he was facing spirits from the game. Could it be that Master Ming was also a player of War in the Net? Ming continued to summon the ghosts of fortune, ignoring Guyu. The young man calmed down and now truly understood that he was surrounded by spirits from the game, which he and his team usually killed 10 of every day. Soon, the master announced that the spell was complete. After that, he said that his fate with the Gu family was complete, and that he would do nothing more for them when they next met. The young man was curious to know where the master had hidden the virtual projection equipment. The young man was sure that the master was trying to trick him by summoning spirits from the game, because the young Gu was having a great time playing it. Ming sincerely did not understand what he was talking about, but the young man insisted that the master was pretending, and was himself an ordinary player of War in the Net. Ming was shocked. In fact, he was the descendant of Devil's Luck, and the young man was just a mortal. The young man continued to talk incessantly about the game and the forum. He said that he went by the nickname Lone Invincible, and collected spirit coins every day. The master asked again, "What kind of game is this?" The young man's patience was running out. He was tired of repeating the same thing over and over. Guyu announced that their relationship was over, and that he needed to return to report to his father, while the master should continue to pretend. Left alone, Ming thought about how he had hoped to go into seclusion for meditation after fulfilling the Gu family's second request, but now his state of mind had become unstable. At that moment, the head of the Gu family was playing when his secretary brought him the phone and said that his grandfather was calling. The call was from Ming, who immediately began asking about the game, War in the Network. The man replied to his grandfather that he had checked the name. It was a normal virtual game, but it felt very realistic. Something incredible happened. The grandfather, who had left the secular world, contacted the man himself, soon appeared at his place, and asked him to prepare a copy of the game. A long time ago, the man's grandfather left this world, and everyone thought he had died. But then he reappeared when his father was already old and his grandfather was still young, which shocked everyone. Only then did everyone realize that the grandfather had indeed become a hermit, and it was with his help that the man was able to build a large business. He had lived in seclusion all these years, and now he was ready to return for the sake of some game. Nonsense. A few days passed, and Bailey's attention was drawn to a cultivator who had recently registered in the game. Lu Wu was worried. People who could travel between the underground world and the real world should not meet with players, otherwise the truth would be revealed. But the girl believed that only immortal beings could travel between the real world and the underworld. In real life, this is practically impossible. Immortal souls are long gone and will never return. They ascended to heaven, and with the depletion of spiritual power in the human world, it is impossible for a strong person to exist. The abode of the dead, the underworld, looked very real. Ming was amazed by what he saw. The game was created in the image of the real underworld. He studied the pavilion for improvement, where there were the skills of magicians, ghost mountains, and a dark strongman from an illustrated reference book. Before putting on the VR helmet, Ming could not understand what kind of power was capable of creating this entire world. Master Ming decided to try the game himself and immerse himself in it completely. He instructed his son to check on the owner behind War in the Net. Ming wanted to know the truth about him. 3 days later, his grandson reported that the owner of the game was an ordinary person with no special past. There was almost no information about the development team, and such strict secrecy seemed strange. They found out everything they could. His grandson sent people to follow the developers, but his grandfather said there was no need. He announced to his grandson that he was ending the investigation because he did not understand what kind of secrets he was investigating. Ming saw the Warrior of Darkness, whom he was able to summon, albeit not completely, and bring things from the underworld into the real world. Ming said that he had learned how to use the summoning of dark warriors in the game, and now he could release them into the real world. Ordinary people cannot use their skills from the game in real life, but a cultivator with a powerful soul can. It turned out that the skills in the game were real, and the owner of the game was just a cover. Behind him was a terrible cultivator. The power of the person behind it had reached the level of the underworld. He was able to travel between the underground and the real world, and could be considered immortal. Under no circumstances should such a powerful force be insulted. The man is glad that his grandfather was able to see through the whole thing. After that, his grandfather demanded to open an account to buy soul coins, and the image of the hermit master in his grandson's heart collapsed. Ming found himself on Ghost Mountain, and could now say that he had gained a deep understanding of one important truth. Only by investing money can you level up in the game. You need to learn skills and buy equipment, spending money everywhere. And if you don't have any, how can you explore the game? Ming turned to Dark Strongman on the forum. He had read that he knew how to blow things up. But then a stranger pushed the master aside, declaring that Dark Strongman was his prey. The man drew his sword and asked the mage in front of him if he wanted to die. Ming immediately realized that the stranger was skilled with a sword, and had probably received a certain inheritance in this world. The player had read on the forum that he would have to fight monsters, but this was the first time Ming had found himself in such a situation. The rivals summoned the Warriors of Darkness and 10 magic balls, respectively. A battle began between them. They clashed again and again, neither giving way to the other. The Dark Warriors were quite strange, different from those controlled by other players. The mages and swordsmen immediately sensed this. Each of these Dark Warriors had their own tactics. They could predict attacks and dodge them as if they had their own consciousness. Ming noticed that his opponent was using the Ao family's ball-handling tactics. It turned out that they were both cultivators. The swordsman demanded that the Dark Strongman be given to him, but Ming insisted that he had come first, and since they were both cultivators, there would be no winner or loser between them. However, at that moment, something unreal happened. As a result, the master's movements were completely blocked. He was distracted by the ball possession tactic and did not notice how the flying sword behind his back disappeared. That was the end of the grandfather's life. Resonant vibrations occurred in the spirit room. It seemed that another heir to the heroic soul had awakened. Most likely, this was due to the new cultivator, Chi Min. The awakened heir to the heroic soul remained unknown to everyone. In real life, preparations were underway for Valentine's Day. Lu Wu wanted to buy gifts for his girlfriend, but she was only thinking about food. In addition, only couples were wandering the streets, and this holiday was definitely not for singles. The young man decided to talk about work, and asked the girl how the soul had awakened, and what the subsequent development would be. Bailey said that the awakened legacy had disappeared again. More precisely, a player named Chi Ming was killed at the moment when the heir to the heroic soul had not yet fully awakened. The soul left the game, and the legacy was interrupted. Indeed, it could be said that this was bad luck. The player died just before he could obtain the heroic soul. But the girl was not upset, because sooner or later he would be able to awaken the legacy again by reappearing in the game after resurrection. Lu Wu thought for a moment and asked a question. If a player encounters a very powerful spirit in the underworld, can the combat artifact protect them so that their souls are not taken away? It turned out that the supreme law of the underground world of reincarnation is closely connected with a magical artifact. The girl couldn't say anything more specific yet, but she assured him that even the strongest spirit obeyed this law, and no one could go against the supreme law of reincarnation. Realizing that he couldn't get anything more out of the girl, Lu Wu suggested they go shopping, but suddenly Bailey announced that they needed to return home urgently. Something very serious had happened. Lu Wu didn't understand what had happened, but he was sure that nothing good had happened. On the outskirts of the Liuli district, in one of the most deserted corners, there were very few players. It was all because of the holiday. All the lovers had gone to celebrate. The players argued that they weren't weaklings who ran around with girls, but that they devoted their entire lives to important things. As they were talking, they heard a strange sound. The guys froze and saw a huge army of ghost soldiers near the border. There was no end in sight to these troops. The players realized that they would have to rest because they were outnumbered. Now they could die and be kicked out of the game for 3 hours. Life is pain. General Sha Na asked his subordinates what living creatures they had encountered along the way, because he had never seen anything like them before. The ghostly messenger of souls informed his master that he had brought several living creatures, and that they could be questioned personally. The soul messenger warned that the creatures were very weak, most likely travelers, and General Sha Na asked them who they were and where they came from. The players stated that they were descendants of Prince Bechi and did not understand why they were being treated this way, since everyone in the game was on equal terms. The ghostly messenger of souls told them not to dare to be insolent to Lord Sha Na. After that, the messenger struck them, and they demanded to shut up that dog lover Sha Na and keep his dog on a leash. The general was shocked by such insolence. If he did not trust the messenger, he would have thought that he had deliberately brought such creatures to upset him. But now, the general simply gave the order to kill the stranger. It was very quiet in the abode of the dead. Few players had logged in today, and the general's army had suddenly appeared. It seemed that the abode of the dead was in great danger. Lu Wu reassured the girl, saying that he was already prepared for the invasion of Sha Na's army, and that there was no need to worry. The general ordered the ghostly messenger of souls to kill anyone he encountered in the abode of the dead, because now it was his territory, and there was no refuge for strangers here. Soon they heard that unexpected guests had appeared in the abode of the dead, and there were even more of them than the general's army. The ghostly messenger said that they might not return to the Luli region, and that these travelers, although superior in number, were in fact very weak. This battle could be won. The temporary commander-in-chief defending the abode of the dead was Wu Goi, who called on his supporters to kill the scoundrel General Sha Na. Lu Wu had previously posted on the forum about the general's invasion, but he did not think that so many people would join during the holiday, and that the commander-in-chief would be Wu's own brother. The players, led by Wu, prepared for the attack. The general's army was also ready. Soon, the ghost warriors realized that the players were indeed weak, and called for them all to be killed, leaving not a single one alive. The players understood that there were too many ghost warriors, and that they would have a hard time, but they continued to fight. The general understood that the strangers were indeed weak, but seeing their comrades die, he noticed that for some reason, they did not lose their fighting spirit, but on the contrary became more insane and evil. It seemed that they were not afraid of death, and since they were not afraid, the most terrifying monster came out to meet them to satisfy their madness. The ghostly messenger of souls believed that these nobodies did not deserve to be killed by the general himself, and asked that this be conveyed to his subordinates. But General Sha Na decided to kill them himself, and thus reduce the army's losses, because there were so many players. Although they were weak, the ghost soldiers could suffer. The general rushed into the attack, and soon the players' camp was almost completely destroyed. Of course, in a head-on collision with the current strength of the players, it was impossible to defeat the general's army. In addition, Sha Na himself entered the battlefield. It seemed that everything related to the abode of the dead would be lost. However, it turned out that Lu Wu had a plan, and if everything went as he intended, reinforcements would arrive soon. After that, requests poured in from powerful players asking for permission to join the battle, and the young man allowed anyone who wanted to join. These were non-player characters who were originally created for entertainment, but in the end, they felt an incomparable hatred for the general and wanted to prove their loyalty to Prince Bechi. The general had already tasted victory, and destroying ordinary players called them brats and weaklings. At that moment, the demon Lu stepped forward and addressed the players, saying that he would cover for them. The other NPCs followed suit, ready to stand up for their players. The players were stunned to see such support and decided to unite against the general. The general was unable to immediately identify the new participants in the battle and thought they were the same players he had killed before. It was very difficult for the NPCs. They were holding back the general's attack with their last ounce of strength. Bailey understood that although Lu Wu had added NPCs, their mental powers were limited, and it was difficult for them to resist the general. But the young man remained calm and confident that the outcome of the battle was not yet decided. Many of his assistants had not died in vain. They had bought time for the players. The real battle was just beginning, and the game was no longer just a game. The characters had become real friends. At that time, most of the strong players were celebrating Valentine's Day and learned of the death of their friends quite by accident. No entertainment could cheer them up anymore. The players felt it was their duty to urgently return to the game and join the battle to avenge their comrades. Gamers on the battlefield broadcast live, showing everyone their strength of spirit and determination. The guilds of guardian angels and great dragons rushed to the aid of their comrades. The players' troops returned, and new characters appeared before the general, stronger and more advanced than ordinary players. The general sincerely did not understand where these players came from, because the abode of the dead had never been covered by a solid army due to a lack of resources, which was why the general had moved here. As a result, he faced so many strangers that he could not kill them all. They were all like madmen and completely fearless of death, so Sha Na ordered all his troops to rush into the attack. The young man realized that the enemy was trying to raise the morale of the ghost army with the drumbeat. But this was not a problem for the players. Now the main song of the game was playing, and the attack began to this musical track. United by a single idea, the desire to win, wonderful beats, and the lyrics of the song, the players lined up for the attack and went after the ghost army. The demons did not understand what was happening. It was obvious that the players had almost no strength left, but under pressure, they rushed into battle again. It was pure madness. The general yelled at his troops not to be confused. Although the strangers were numerous and insane, they were all weaklings. It was still a battle, and the ghostly army had the advantage. But suddenly, the general recognized some of the players and realized that the strangers had mastered the power of the path of hell and were supported by their ancestors. At that moment, one of the players said that he had spent a lot of money to buy soul coins, collect the necessary materials, and become the first rune knight in the game. And now the moment had come when he could demonstrate his power. General Sha Na immediately sensed the threat from the rune knight. The ordinary warriors realized that they were no match for him and ran away. The general was shocked. With each passing minute, more and more new players appeared, and he began to think that Prince Bechi himself might soon appear on the battlefield. Ming enjoyed what was happening. He did not think that at the twilight of his life he would see such a magnificent battle. The puppy did not stand aside either. He joined the mythical guild and was supposed to heal his comrades in arms. The puppy immediately healed all the wounded, and under the leadership of Wu Gui, the players launched another attack. 4 hours of terrible battle passed, and it became clear that the general's army could not hold out. The ghostly messenger of souls warned the Lord that there were too many strangers, and the ghostly warriors began to lose confidence. After that, General Sha Na ordered his troops to retreat, and the sight of the fleeing demons genuinely surprised and shocked the players. It was approaching 8 o'clock, and the battle was already reaching the shores of the underworld sea. There was nowhere left to retreat. The players had no intention of giving up and continued to chase the monsters. The general sincerely did not understand how such a brutal people could exist. The monster expected that by killing some of the players, the rest would be terrified. He did not expect that, on the contrary, they would become even more enraged. It soon became clear that the players had caught up with the general, and he realized that he would not have provoked these madmen if he had only known their nature. The ghostly messenger of souls began to get nervous and demanded that her master come up with a plan quickly. But the general's plan was to abandon his army and flee alone, leaving even his loyal servants behind. The Rune Knight did not want to let the general escape and rushed into the attack. But the Rune Knight did not have enough strength, and in the next moment, the general killed him. The general was glad to have dealt with their leader, although these restless heroes had gotten on his nerves. Seeing this, the players decided to avenge the Rune Knight and intensified their attack on the general. They used their most powerful techniques against the villain. The monster continued to scream desperately that he would not die so easily. And indeed, there was a huge, powerful explosion that shook the entire underground world. When the smoke and fire cleared, the wounded general crawled on his belly, feeling his strength ebbing away. He needed to jump into the sea and escape urgently. It was his last chance. General Sha Na flew up, realizing that the players had won today. But he would definitely gather his strength and kill them all. The players knew that things were bad, and that the villain was escaping. The gamers thought there was no way to stop the villain, when suddenly a fiery arrow whistled over their heads. It was the moment of glory for the archer, who had been repeatedly laughed at. It seemed that the young man had hit the target, and now his destiny was clear. General Sha Na was his fate. Soon, the game gave a notification. Boss Sha Na had been killed. All players received a lot of experience points and status upgrades. But what they liked most was the fact that they had jointly defeated such a powerful opponent. Even the developers couldn't believe what was happening. Now they felt it was necessary to reward the players according to their merits. The battle that Bechi's army fought against the general and destroyed him was already recorded in the history books. Years passed, and once again the army defeated the Ghost Warriors and General Sha Na. Some time passed, and Lu Wu stood alone on the shore while the other players celebrated their victory. They gathered in the abode of the dead, took out their treats, and celebrated. The players themselves built a grave for the NPCs who died in battle. The young man decided not to revive the non-player characters, leaving them in the players' memory as heroes who gave their lives. In any case, the NPCs' deaths were not in vain. They opened the way for the players to conquer more distant and vast lands. Now that the players had reached the shores of the Ghost Sea, it became clear that special goods needed to be created for them. A ghost battleship was created for alliances and guilds, as well as a ghost ship for personal use. These ships could be cultivated and took the form of monsters, which added speed, or they could take the form of a tyrant and have increased hull strength. In addition, new sea treasures were developed, such as the mysterious fruit, gifted by the sea. By swallowing it, one could receive the blessing of the sea. There was also a green-blue tree, one of the best spiritual items for developing a ghost ship, and the spirit fish of the sea. Swallowing it would grant bonuses inherent to the fish class. A wonderful underwater palace and various sea relics were also created. Of course, there were also sea disasters that had to be avoided while sailing. We also added weapon crafters, skill instructors, experienced sailors, and other NPCs. All these updates were enthusiastically received by players and received a lot of positive feedback. The next stage in the game's development was the filming of commercials. A disaster-level ghost battleship was already sailing in the seas of the underworld. The photographer managed to capture it against the backdrop of screaming mermaids and a huge number of fish. Under the protection of the sea, this ship engaged in battle with a giant octopus and withstood the blow. Lu Wu transformed and changed his costume, studying the surroundings with a telescope. One of the fish was completely consumed by energy and shimmered with blue light, thus manifesting the wrath of Moira. The filming of the commercial came to an end, and the young man realized that thanks to the destruction of the general's army, they had enough soul coins to design the ghost battleship. In addition to selling ships and battleships, Bei Li organized the sale of fishing items in the game store. She considered this useful for boosting the enthusiasm of fishing experts, as the spirit fish in the sea were a real treasure. The sea route for players had already been figured out, but the Devil of the Rocks in the Northern Territory was still a problem. It was necessary to map out a route through these territories. Bei Li watched the live broadcast from the shore, where one of the players was teaching the others how to build a ship without money. This was not a good thing. If the players learned how to build ships themselves, the company would go bankrupt. Therefore, Lu Wu decided to take a look at everything himself. And so it was. Live on air, one of the players built a boat and planned to set sail in it. At first glance, it seemed that this contraption would fall apart at any moment. However, 2 players went out to sea, and so far, everything was calm. But Lu Wu knew that there were many dangers in the sea on all sides, and the fruit could easily capsize. If that happened, the other players would realize how important it was to buy a ghost ship. The fishing was in full swing, and one player felt that he had caught something very large. After 5 hours of fishing, he was still struggling with the fish and couldn't pull it out. And just as Lu Wu was about to return to the real world, he heard the player shout. The fish was caught. It turned out to be a spirit fish called Hawthorne. After accepting it, he could increase its special properties, and it was also worth a lot of money if sold. The player pulled the fish out with satisfaction, without feeling irritated or tired. But then the fisherman felt that the sea had become completely calm, as if it had fallen silent. In the next moment, the huge lord of the Sea of Illusions named Tao Wu swallowed the fisherman along with the raft. It was unreal. even for the developers. They did not understand where the Lord of the Sea of Illusions had suddenly appeared from. Bai Li was sure that it was really a coincidence, because Tao Wu lives tens of thousands of meters underwater all year round. But by chance he suddenly rose to the surface and devoured the fishing players. The player was lucky. When he was swallowed by the monster, he managed to grab a very valuable item in its stomach, the bone of a magical dragon, and now planned to sell it. The latest news was being discussed in the northern mountainous regions. It turned out that the Luli region had been occupied by a new force, and General Sha Na had been killed, as reported by Commander-in-Chief Taishir. The Lord of Ghost Rock did not expect that the general would die not at the hands of Poseidon, but from some external force. The commander wondered whether to declare war on the abode of the dead, since the origin of these strangers was unknown. The Lord of the Rock decided not to provoke the newcomers with war for the time being, so that others would not take advantage of the situation. However, the Commander-in-Chief was concerned that the strangers might attack first. But the Lord of the Rock did not believe this was likely. Who would dare to fight his army of tree demons on his territory? His army was truly powerful and terrifying. It was well camouflaged and left its opponents no chance. The Commander-in-Chief, trembling with fear before his superiors, agreed that no one in the northern territories would dare to oppose him. The Lord of the Rock interrupted his subordinate's flattery and asked, "How are things going with the Forest Spirits clan?" His patience had run out. The Commander-in-Chief reported that the Forest Spirits were stubborn and refused to obey, so it had been decided to attack and destroy them. A few days passed, and sales of the new ships, a battleship and a small vessel, broke all records. The naval power of the Bechi army was gradually taking shape. Lu Wu decided that it was time to announce the mission to go to sea to the players, and the game sent out a notification about a special New Year's event with prizes. A fishing tournament was announced. To register, players had to find a pilot who was waiting for everyone on the shore. For each fish caught, players received a certain number of points, and whoever caught a fish of the spirit of the ocean, Space's level, immediately received the title of champion. On the second day, a New Year's treasure hunt was planned in the abode of the dead, in the Liuli area. Obtaining a New Year's star guaranteed a blue title and increased the character's speed. On the third day, significant discounts on items in the store were promised. The first two events were really difficult, but the third day with discounts brought everyone positive emotions. The players came up with the idea of replenishing their accounts, but Lu Wu did not want to introduce this feature, suggesting instead that they simply kill monsters and spend soul coins. Bailey noticed that something was happening in the underground world. Many clans began to head for the abode of the dead. Representatives of various clans gathered at the entrance to the Ghost Mountains. They tried to figure out what was going on. The Forest Spirit clan looked like ordinary people, but had the abilities to grow, heal, and protect. The players did not understand why this clan had come to the abode of the dead, since this was the territory of Beiqi's army. This surprised the representatives of the Forest Spirits. They knew that the prince's army had long been defeated and no longer existed. But one player was indignant and said that Prince Bechi had 1,000,000 descendants and demanded that the strangers introduce themselves and explain why they had come. Outwardly, they still looked like humans, but they were alive. The stranger replied that they belonged to the Forest Spirit clan, which had been approved by Prince Bechi himself as a clan of healers. After the prince's death, the Forest Spirit clan was locked up in the northern mountains, and the Lord of the Ghost Rock tried to use them. A few days ago, he decided to destroy the entire tribe. The players did not know whether to trust this representative of the Spirit clan, or whether he had been sent by the Lord of the Rock. Opinions were divided. Lu Wu knew that the spirit was telling the truth, but something still seemed suspicious. Bailey was pensive, her mind racing with thoughts. She was confused that the Forest Spirit clan still existed, while all the other forces loyal to Prince Bechi had long been destroyed by other villains. If so, were the spirits traitors? Lu Wu reassured the girl. The messenger who secretly worked for the Lord of the Rock had already reported on the situation. The Spirit clan had survived because the Lord of the Rock wanted to use them to increase the combat effectiveness of his army. He forcibly took the spirits away and held them captive, thus protecting them from other villains. This was because the Forest Spirit clan was weak in combat, but possessed healing powers, which appealed to the Lord of the Rock. They resisted to the last, and now the players did not want to believe them and were going to check their signs. One of the gamers said he didn't trust the spirit and suggested going to the butler of the abode of the dead to find out the truth. The Forest Spirit was surprised. How could there be a butler of the abode of the dead? He had served Prince Bechi for so many years and had never seen a butler. When everyone arrived at the abode of the dead in the main temple, there was no end to the tears of joy and happiness. The butler could not hold back his tears, for he did not believe that the Forest Spirits could have survived after the prince's death and the villain's seizure of the land. The Spirit clan, of course, did not know this butler. He had been created by Lu Wu recently. but he recognized the spirits thanks to the information provided by Lu Wu. The players were satisfied, having received confirmation that they were not facing enemies. The players were happy that they had killed the general and avenged their comrades, and now they were going to deal with the Sea King and the Lord of the Ghost Rock in the Northern Territories. It was decided to revive Prince Bechi's army and rule over the entire underground world. The spirits' plan covered the basics. These people had destroyed the general and now were going to defeat the Sea King and the Lord of Ghost Rock. The players got along well with the Forest Spirit Clan, so Lu Wu asked the manager to take them with him to make a vow before the military artifact. After the artifact received the Oath of Allegiance from the Spirit Clan, Lu Wu slightly altered their memories and made them a new type of NPC. Soon, the Forest Spirit Clan will be able to integrate into the player community as military doctors, who help players stay combat ready for longer. In addition, many romantic interests arose between the representatives, so it was necessary to establish a level of intimacy protection. Since the clan of Forest Spirits became partners, it became necessary to organize a place for them to live. It was decided to settle them on the border between the Abode of the Dead and the Luli region. The Forest Spirit Healer was very upset when she was unable to heal a mortally wounded player, but he was not worried because he knew he would return in a few hours as good as new. Another player dreamed of dying as soon as possible and asked his colleague to help him so that he could return to the game with full strength. In general, the Forest Spirit Clan has not yet figured out when to heal players and when to kill them. A few days later, the players and the Forest Spirits went into another battle. They killed monsters together and did pretty well overall, but sometimes the monsters killed players, and they wanted the Forest Spirits to heal them faster. The Forest Spirits already understood. There was no need to worry too much. In 3 hours, the player would be resurrected as good as new, and with such a wound, he could not be saved. They decided not to heal the next player either. His arm looked bad, his leg too. Better not to waste time and die first, as a sign of respect, so that they could then help the other wounded. The fairy went to treat others with lighter wounds, although the player thought he could still be saved. It seemed that the initially kind nature of the Forest Spirit Clan was gradually becoming insensitive after communicating with the players. Unfortunately, all living creatures change under the influence of society and their environment, but Lu Wu's attention was drawn to a completely unknown sound. A huge clock appeared in the sky. It came out of nowhere, even though there had never been anything like it there before. It was New Year's Eve in the Sea of the Underworld. The clock struck the countdown, signaling the arrival of the new year. This was followed by festive fireworks, and the official start of the fishing competition was announced. The players really liked the clock in the sky, and combined with the fireworks, the atmosphere was truly New Year's Eve-like, just like in the real world. One of the first fishermen to catch a fish and earn a bonus was a dog who caught an island tooth, a sea spirit-level fish. One of the unlucky players mentally cursed absolutely everyone while waiting for a bite, but soon he got lucky. The rod vibrated in his hands, and he pulled out not just a fish, but a special sea spirit-level fish. The player was absolutely happy, but did not want to sell the fish, considering it unclean blood. Soon, however, he roasted it. Even though the fish looked strange, it smelled delicious. There was a strange player who preferred to eat a rare fish instead of selling it. But every player makes their own choices. Bai Li, who loved to eat, understood him like no one else. The next day of the competition also went well. It was fun and productive. Treasure was scattered throughout the area, which could be searched for, collected, and then sold or exchanged. Not only ordinary players were engaged in this, but even famous and distinguished cultivators. Soldiers were useless. They only knew how to attack or defend and could not collect treasures. The players did not hesitate to push each other around in order to get as many New Year's coupons as possible. The Forest Spirits still did not understand people. While fishing was understandable, the crazy running around the mountains and plains baffled them. The little representatives of the Forest Spirits Clan went with the people to run and collect colorful coupons. After that, they counted the coupons and handed out prizes to the winners. The New Year's messenger was in charge of counting and selling the necessary items for the earned coupons. The summoned demons helped collect many New Year's coupons, and the player received a hidden profession. This profession was called Ghost Beast. It could summon spirits and cause destruction, and outwardly resembled a flying horse with horns. With its help, it was possible to summon various forms of ghosts for one's needs, and as the level increased, the number of summons increased. The third ability was to mobilize the powers of the Ghost Beast in the body and deliver a devastating blow. The third day of the event arrived, and all items in the store were discounted for the new year. The event had only just begun, but the goods were almost sold out, and the players' enthusiasm for the discounts was enormous. Lu Wu had spent the first 2 days creating them, and was now going to focus on making money. Taking advantage of the situation, Bai Li offered players a collection of new fashionable uniforms. While the bidding was going on, Bai Li noticed that a player had appeared on the Cliff of Despair. The developers immediately went to check it out and saw a couple. a pestle, and a player named Gu Yu. Posel smelled alcohol and told his partner about it. Soon they approached a strange wooden house. Perhaps some wise man lived there, and the player knocked on the door just in case. The door was opened by an ancient old man with a beard that reached halfway down his chest, wearing a hooded cloak. The old man did not want to talk to them and was about to close the door when suddenly the dog announced in human language that he was hoping for an invitation to sit down. The old man was terrified. The dog was talking. He had never seen anything like it before. He had encountered many terrible creatures, but nothing like this. The dog was offended. He was not a scary monster, but just a player in this game. The old man realized that he would have to invite the unexpected guests in, because they were very persistent and had no intention of leaving. The strangers entered the house and prepared to spend time with the owner. The host offered them tea and buns, just so they would leave on time. But the young man wanted to get some new life advice, and learned that all grandfathers living alone on top of a mountain are very wise. However, at that moment, he was happily eating muffins and was completely satisfied with life. After tea, the hermit went to the far corner of the house and returned with a paper certificate. He read aloud the oath written on the certificate. It said that Prince Bechi swore that his descendants would always guard the Cliff of Despair, the source of evil, and obey the will of heaven. The document looked impressive, and the scribbles were understandable. But the player still didn't understand. If the grandfather was a descendant of the prince, then so were all of them. He couldn't get rid of the guy, so the hermit continued his story. It was a very long story. He talked for a long time, and the player was already getting frustrated because he hadn't heard anything useful for himself. But then the hermit asked if the guy knew who was standing in front of him. It turned out that he was a descendant of King Bechi and had proof of his identity, the prince's royal seal, created by the founder of the kingdom and symbolizing supreme power and glory. The old man said that his ancestor was the founder of the land and ruled Bechi for hundreds of thousands of years. The Cliff of Despair was the place where he was buried. All the demons inhabiting the abode of the dead were his subordinates, guarding his tomb. Among them is the strongest god, who carried out the prince's will after his death. The Cliff of Despair is just a horn on the head of this evil god. This information made the player's brains boil. The hermit did not know the exact reason why the evil god was sealed on the cliff. But even 10 ancestors combined would not be able to defeat him. Although he was sealed, the villain's mind was unstable, and evil thoughts often broke through. The ancestor had only fought a fraction of those thoughts. After hearing all this, the player still declared that he planned to continue climbing to the top of the mountain. Whoever climbs to the top will be struck by evil thoughts. Their body will be taken away, and they themselves will become a new vessel. The demons from the scroll were sent by the ancestors to prevent anyone from climbing the mountain. The hermit continued to warn the players for a long time. Do not climb, otherwise if God takes possession of their bodies, it will be a trifle. But if they become his clones, it will be a catastrophe for the whole earth. Of course, the players promised that they would not climb the mountain under any circumstances for the sake of the safety of the land of Bechi. But as soon as they left the old man, they immediately rushed to climb up before it got dark. It was time to go online. Suddenly, one of the players felt his heart tremble, his body spin out of control, and all sorts of negative thoughts flood his mind. The gamer grabbed the dog and began shaking it, even though the dog was trying to bring his friend back to reality. The player came to his senses a little, apologized, and said he didn't understand what had happened. His whole body was enveloped by an unknown force, and bloody and murderous scenes instantly appeared in his mind. The sensation was so real that even though Guyu knew it was a game, he felt a constant fear. The dog assumed that everything the old man had said was true, and he also felt that someone was watching them. He suggested turning back, but the player said that the worst thing that could happen to them was to die a couple of times. But this was a game, so they had to go on and climb the mountain. At the top of the Cliff of Despair, it was very lonely and gloomy. The player decided not to hold back his emotions and immediately marked the territory. He considered it more of an instinctive reaction, although he was a little ashamed. The dog didn't understand how the pole lit up. Perhaps he was just lucky and caused a resonance with his presence. Suddenly, a blow to the muzzle knocked the dog off its feet, sending it flying quite a distance, as if the pillar had told it that it didn't like it. Guyu also decided to try it and turned to the pole. He opened his eyes and realized he should never have done that. Before him appeared a seething sea of blood, in which a newborn baby was rocking on the waves. Streams of blood penetrated the player's consciousness, instilling terror. It was the bloody lady who occupied all of the player's thoughts. Soon, the blood receded, and a newborn baby wrapped in swaddling clothes appeared. At birth, he was filled with an ominous power, and would most likely bring misfortune to the entire giant clan. The father did not want to abandon the child, but the nymph forbade it, and predicted disaster for the entire clan. The god's evil thoughts were strange, so the young man decided to use the artifact of war to enter the player's mind and understand what was happening. Bai Li finally admitted that there was no need to enter the player's mind. She already knew what had happened. The birth of the bloody child foreshadowed disaster, but the king of the giants did not want to kill him. The child grew up, but was incompatible with the rest of the family. The other giant children were already tall, but he was small and suffered from bullying among the tribe. But he was not sad, and lived well every day because he had loving parents who cared for him. The day came when zombies attacked the entire giant city, and war was about to break out. The drought demon gave the order to kill all the giants and capture the source of blood. The giants went into battle, and the bloody baby wanted to go too. But his father would not allow it, as he was the last representative of the clan and was to become the ruler of the entire clan. The drought demon demanded that the king of the giants give up the blood source, so that the death of the people would be less painful. But the king of the giants declared that no one would force him to surrender. He would fight. A huge boulder fell on the king of the giants' head, and he was destroyed. The drought demon demanded that the source of blood be given to him. The giants tried to resist, but the demon was so huge that even they seemed like babies compared to him. The drought demon destroyed everyone in its path. The bloody child wept with grief. He did not understand why he was born so short and could not follow his father into battle. The child did not understand why everyone went to defend him at the cost of their lives, because he had always been unloved. But his mother protected him with a dome and said that he was one of them, part of the tribe. And even if they had once looked down on him, it was not out of malice. The tribe of giants never yields to coercion from outsiders. The child suddenly realized that it was his fault that he had brought disaster upon the entire race of giants, and that he was too weak to fight. But then the demon of drought turned to the child and said he was surprised that the source of blood had feelings. The demon informed the child that being weak was his original sin, and now he would become a bloody snack that would help the demon move forward. The child did not want to accept such a fate, and did not want to live in a world where he would be the only survivor. Therefore, the baby decided to destroy the whole world. From rage and inner anger, he began to grow, and in the end, the demon of drought became a bug in comparison to him. And the more the baby grew, the more he hated everything and everyone. He decided to destroy not only the demon, but the whole world. And under the open sky, he attacked his enemy with all his might, devouring the demons and all their powers. When he had expelled all the negativity, the baby gradually shrank and returned to normal size. A girl named Lee appeared before him and said that it was impossible to destroy this world, but she was ready to become his friend. She explained that he was very dangerous now, and she would put him to sleep, waking him up only when he became more agreeable. After that, the stranger took advantage of the situation and gradually put the dangerous giant to sleep, promising that when the time came, they would become friends. Lu Wu decided that the woman in white who had preserved the giant was Bai Li, but the girl said it wasn't her, although she knew who did it. However, she couldn't tell the young man the whole truth now, because his soul would burst under the weight of the secret. It was mysterious and unbelievable, so Lu Wu decided to find a way to improve the strength of his soul so that he could bear the secret that Bai Li would tell him. Gu Yu was still standing motionless, and the dog had already begun to worry about his boss. Finally, the player came to his senses and said that strange images had appeared in his mind, similar to memories of the evil god. Now he knew that the pagoda pillar had appeared after the evil god had been sealed. It was unclear why the dog jumped back when it touched the pagoda. Perhaps it saw the god's trace. Suddenly the player heard a voice in his head asking if he wanted power. But the player did not believe in such things. He said he wanted peace and asked to be spoken to like a human being. But the voice spoke to him again and said that if the young man fulfilled one condition, he would receive infinite power. The voice wanted him to help kill the demon of drought. It turned out that the drought demon had not been killed. It had managed to escape, and the old corpse in the burial ground was the demon itself. Lu Wu was worried that the evil god would harm the player's soul, but Bai Li assured him that there was nothing to worry about. In fact, it was just an ordinary god living in the underworld. But the young man remembered the words of the old hermit, who claimed that even 10 princes of Bechi would not be able to defeat this evil god. Bai Li admitted that she was indebted to this evil god, and now the young man could help her. The player agreed to the proposal and asked where the drought demon was. It turned out that he was hiding in a bone tomb, and for killing him, the player would receive unlimited power. Gu Yu honestly admitted that he would not be able to do this because he was not capable of defeating it. But the spirit confirmed his fears, saying that the player would not be able to defeat it, but the evil spirit that had consumed the young man would. But then the evil spirit was disappointed. It could not capture the player's soul because it was not attached to the body. The player screamed desperately throughout the dungeon, and the spirit asked him about the eternal soul that the young man possessed. The player admitted that at first he had planned to take revenge, but now he would do nothing because the spirit wanted to take his soul. Then the spirit turned his attention to the dog, but the dog was wary and would not give in. The evil spirit approached from the other side and asked to borrow his body, promising to return it after killing the demon and giving the player supreme power. But the player was unshakable. Bai Li owed the evil god and the young man helped her. He established a way to help the spirit. A military artifact would drive out the player's evil thoughts, and he would not be harmed. After that, the player agreed to rent his body for 3 hours, and the evil spirit thanked him, saying that this time would be enough. After receiving all the blessings and signing the contracts, the player's body began to fill with the spirit of the evil god. The player felt unprecedented strength, and it seemed to him that he could crush 10 Shana generals with one hand. Finally, complete reincarnation and transformation took place, and the evil spirit promised to return the body after completing its business, and kept its promise. Having said this, the evil spirit in the player's body rose into the sky and flew away, and the dog began a live broadcast, announcing that his boss had turned into a great evil god and was going to bring disaster to the entire land of Bechi. 2.5 hours later, the bone tomb was pierced by a huge bloody comet. Inside the fiery blood ball, someone was present, possessing insane power. The evil spirit in the player's body, standing on the tomb, addressed the drought demon, saying that he knew the demon was there and offered to come out to die. Guyu continued to summon the drought demon and demanded that it appear for a fair fight. The player, not waiting for the enemy to appear, began to pound the burial mound where the drought demon was locked up with his fists. Finally, the demon's soul was pulled out of the tomb, and the player hoped to destroy it. The young man was working with the bloody evil spirit of the underworld, to whom he had leased his body. His hand was raised for the final blow. The drought demon could not believe that the bloody evil spirit had become strong again and could harm him. But then the bloody spirit used the 8-armed demon option against the entire enemy. The drought demon began to restrain his opponent and bind his hands and feet, amazed at the audacity of the bloody evil spirit, who had taken advantage of a human body. The developers watched what was happening, and Bai Li was worried because the evil spirit was strong, but only a trace of evil thoughts remained from it. Lu Wu wanted the evil god to be able to get rid of his anger and negative emotions in order to become a true god, and the young man helped a little with his artifact. The bloody evil spirit felt a powerful surge of strength and was able to break the bonds that bound him. The drought demon did not understand what was happening. He felt that some external force had helped his opponent, but he could not understand who it belonged to. But no one was going to answer the drought demon's questions, and soon he was completely finished. Justice prevailed, and the seal of evil was set. The power was insane, and the players did not understand how it was possible to gather such power, even if they played the game their entire lives. The drought demon did not want to give up, because he had been hiding in the tomb for so long and hoped to still get out of it. The evil spirit killed the drought demon, but his end was also near. At the same time as his enemy, he felt that he could no longer resist, and the player who had rented out his body flew away. Circumstances were such that both the evil spirit and the drought demon were frightened. The evil spirit had effectively lost its fighting power after encountering only a cauldron. It turned out that this was one of the most powerful gods who ruled life and death in the underworld, Emperor Dunyu, who, along with 2 other emperors, truly possessed divine power. The underworld is vast and divided into east and west. Even such powerful gods as the 3 great emperors are only rulers of the eastern underworld. Lu Wu wanted to know what connection the evil spirit had to Emperor Dunyue. It was probably somehow related to the evil spirit's previous life, but it was not known exactly why the emperor was taking revenge on him. In the end, circumstances unfolded in such a way that both opponents were neutralized by Emperor Dunyue. The evil spirit could not win because he had signed a 3-hour contract, and the time was almost up. Guyu received notification of the end of his reincarnation, and felt the blood evil spirit leaving his body. The spirit resisted with all its might. It did not want to accept reality. It had suffered for hundreds of thousands of years, and today it finally had hope of killing the drought demon. They could have said or done something to each other, but both were destroyed by a third force, and some strange skeletons rushed after the player. But the dog was happy that his boss had returned. Deep underground, on the cliff of despair, the evil god had to restrain his power. The old hermit, placing his hand on the rock, said that the chains binding the evil spirit were connected to the pagoda at the top of the mountain, and the evil spirit would never be able to break free from them. The spirit could not calm down, for he had finally waited for his chance and had almost accomplished his revenge. It was unknown how many thousands of years he would have to wait for the next time. The evil spirit begged the old man to free him, promising him infinite power in return. But the old man did not believe his words, and said that he was the only one willing to simply talk to the spirit. Then the bloody evil spirit asked the old man to bring the young man here, the player whose body he had recently used. The spirit swore that he would no longer take over a human body, but he had to fulfill his promise. The old man began to transform, and the bloody evil spirit realized that the hermit would help him. He was glad to find himself in a situation where such a monster was asking for help. Guyu was trying to escape from the skeleton dogs when he felt a magical force surround him and pull him into a whirlpool. The spirit of drought could not understand where the mortal had disappeared to, for his faithful servants had pursued the player until he vanished. The young man and the dog found themselves at the top of the cliff of despair in front of the door of an abandoned house. Could it be that the evil spirit had brought them back here and saved them from persecution? An old hermit opened the door and asked what they were doing there and why they had come back. The player did not answer. He ordered the dog to sit and wait and set off in an unknown direction. Guyu said that he had dropped something on the way and would go find it. He would not climb the mountain, but would leave the dog with the hermit, which was exactly what was needed, since he had helped the evil spirit. At the top of the cliff of despair, near a huge skeleton, the bloody evil spirit appeared. The player told him that he had come for what he had promised, because he had fulfilled his part of the agreement, although he was worried that the evil spirit would simply kill him. But soon the player felt his body fill with energy, and a notification came that he had become an apostle of the evil spirit and received the power of blood. These abilities allowed the player to recover quickly from injuries, expend less energy, and summon hellfire that burned a large area around him. The young man could also manipulate blood and absorb it, quickly restoring his energy and health. After activating his gaze, all targets looking at the player would be consumed by negative emotions and find themselves in a state of chaos and weakness. Guyu was dissatisfied because he had to destroy his rune warrior profession to obtain the inherited power of the evil spirit. The player wanted to have two professions, but the developers deliberately destroyed the rune warrior and had no intention of restoring it because they wanted compensation for their work. The evil spirit asked the player if he wanted to become strong. The evil spirit said that he had given the guy a seed of blood, and if he could successfully grow it, he would master one of the laws of the underworld. The player still had no idea what was going on, but the demon was ready to explain. If a person mastered any of the laws of heaven and earth, they could become much closer to the gods. And if they earned the emperor's blessing, they would become a new god. It sounded very pompous, and Guyu couldn't help but like it. Soon, the player came to his senses and realized that he needed to be more modest, because now the evil spirit had become his boss, and he was ready to learn how to become stronger. The difficulty of growing blood seeds was that it was a very long process. However, the evil spirit could help speed it up, and the guy was ready for anything. The evil spirit said that the drought demon had changed its hiding place, but its breath could still be felt, and he asked to find and kill the demon. To do this, he needed to go to the city of evil nightmares. Guyu agreed to fulfill this request. The task is not time-limited, so he will calmly level up, and the guild will continue to expand, and the player will have a chance to complete the mission. The evil spirit warned that when the player goes to fight the drought demon, he will not be able to escape death. Isn't the guy afraid of that? But none of the players were afraid of death, simply because the evil spirit did not realize that in a couple of hours, the players would be brought back to life. After the players saw the live broadcast of the battle between the evil spirit and the drought demon, many began to want to become stronger. This topic was discussed on the gaming forum. Magic players were particularly outraged, cursing the developers for not increasing the power of mages. They called the developers clueless and incapable of planning. In the end, the guy realized that he had to do something about it. Lu Wu created a template for mages and updated it. Now Mac had become a true pentagram. He received the body of water and could use himself as a source of spells, performing ultra-long range and large-scale attacks. He obtained the body of earth, which allowed him to control the power of the earth using comprehensive abilities aimed at control and self-defense. The body of gold provided powerful protection for a short period of time. The bodies of wood and fire were similar and also expanded the capabilities and abilities of mages. A new NPC, the Destroyer, was also created and added, specifically designed to help mages change professions. Initially, the young man planned to release 3 mage templates, but the players did not want to wait, so he prepared a template for changing professions. But Bei Li's attention was drawn to movement in the sea zone, and she was no longer listening to her partner. A battleship called the Evil God was sailing in the Sea of Illusions. The players decided not to create a cool look, but to focus on stability. Representatives of the Evil God Guild were on the ship with their leader. The guys sailed to the island of Fallen Fish, and were surprised to see houses and some kind of abandoned village. Strange humanoid creatures that did not look very friendly came out to meet the players. They belonged to the Karis tribe. The players did not know how aggressive these creatures were. Perhaps they were normal people, or maybe they were wild monsters. After a short time, a large cauldron in the middle of the village began to boil, and it became clear that these monsters' skills were too strong, despite the players' good equipment. It was very exciting. The guys had just arrived, and they were already about to be eaten. But, unfortunately, they couldn't leave the game and were forced to hang around, waiting to be cooked. One of the players couldn't calm down and said that he wanted revenge, because he had never been eaten in his life, and whoever dared to eat him would pay a high price. At that moment, one of the monsters approached the guy. The savage opened the bag, took something out of it, and stuffed it into the talkative player's mouth. It turned out to be spices. Not only did the savages want to eat them, but they also wanted to stuff them. The players realized that they could not resist and were ready to eat all the spices so that they could be killed quickly and start the game over. Watching what was happening, Lu Wu did not like the fact that the development of the marine zone began with stuffing the players with spices and eating them. At this time, the capital of the Dragon Kingdom was also in turmoil. Lu Pan, who had previously been eaten by the fish people, decided to take revenge on them. The evil god guild assembled a new expedition because the players could not bear such humiliation, and, having prepared themselves, set off for the island of Fallen Fish. The guys returned, despite the fact that they had recently been eaten here, but their desire for revenge was strong. The guild spent a lot of money and hired dozens of professional players. They would avenge their humiliation. The guys could no longer hold back and, full of rage and determination, rushed into the attack. One of the monsters began to blow a horn. The players did not know what this would lead to, as the monster might be calling for reinforcements. The guys decided not to worry ahead of time and hope for help from the pros. But in a few moments, they were surrounded by huge fishmen. Soon, 3 huge cauldrons were bubbling in the middle of the village. This time, the locals were planning a real feast. One of the players tried to figure out why they had been hung and why they weren't simply killed. Meanwhile, the fish people discussed what was happening among themselves and were generally satisfied with the upcoming dinner. Those players who found themselves in this situation for the first time were overly talkative, speculating about what further events would lead to. The fish people looked at them with interest, and they had bags of spices in their hands. Soon, the most talkative players were stuffed for their chattiness. Some players even liked the spices, but it was disgusting that they were not angry and did not want revenge. It was simply shameful to be in the same fire with them. When they were finally thrown into vats and boiled, the players decided not to tell others about their disgrace. Soon, the second camp of players was destroyed, and all the food was cooked. On the forum, one of the participants said that he had found the children of the ocean who lived on the island, and there were quite a few of them. A few days later, newcomers eager to explore Pachaya Fish Island arrived by ship. They had read that the indigenous people were very hospitable. The fish people also looked at the new arrivals with interest and did not understand what to do. They could not fish or hunt because they knew that food would soon arrive. The fish people did not understand why these sick creatures were coming, knowing that they would die. Where did they get this courage and determination? The situation with the death and consumption of players was happening constantly. New players arrived and became food. All because the evil god guild did not tell the truth. Lu Wu believed that soon the players would not be able to hold back and would tell everyone what was happening. Although the guy understood that most likely it would be the fish people who would not be able to hold back and would tell the whole underground world the truth. In the underwater world of the Illusory Sea, a representative of the Crucian Carp tribe came to Poseidon. He complained that creatures came to the island of Fallen Fish every day to die. The poor fish people could no longer tolerate it. Poseidon said that this was excellent, because now the Crucian Carp tribe would be able to raise their children normally and not worry about hunger. But the problem was that after the people were boiled, they turned into mist and disappeared, and the poor fish people had nothing to eat. Poseidon sent a big hammer to lead the group of fish people, protect the Crucian Carp tribe, and learn the story of the creatures who came on ships. A few days later, the developers decided to go to Fishfall Island to watch the show. Everything on the island was as usual. Players arrived on ships, despite the huge number of those who had been deceived and eaten. The sea monsters could no longer tolerate this influx of players. They kept coming back again and again, and something had to be done. The hammerhead shark had not slept for several days, dealing with these creatures. King Poseidon sent help, but even with assistance, it was impossible to deal with these weaklings on their own. There were too many players, and they simply outnumbered them. The big hammer was initially delighted when Poseidon sent him to guard the area, because the Crucian Carp tribe was responsible for food and drink. But gradually, the big hammer realized that things were not so simple. These weak creatures did not even allow him to sleep or rest, because they behaved in a completely chaotic manner. It was an army of suicides. They came to die, smiling and waving their hands. Another group of players sailed to the island on ships, with some of them having no idea what awaited them. The poor sea monsters looked in horror at the approaching flotilla. They did not know what to do or where to hide. As the sea monster troops grew, so did the suicide army. It was some kind of mockery, but the sea monsters had no choice, and after complaining to each other about their unfortunate fate, they set out to destroy these suicidal creatures. The hammer sailed up to one of the ships and easily smashed it. He could no longer tolerate their return, and wanted to bury all creatures in the sea. The players were optimistic and were going to fight the sea monsters and explore the island. To protect their ship, they used the ghost ship function and sailed safely onward. After that, the players managed to defeat the hammerhead shark, and they all received a promotion. After that, the guy was sent to destroy the Sea King's troops. The developers not only opened up the sea zone, but also made it so that players can now earn extra income by repairing damaged ships. Lu Wu and Bei Li were pleased with their little tricks, which allowed them to increase their capital. And as if by accident, posted a new message on the forum. In the Iron Hammer Hall, the soul bead of the Great Hammer went out, and it was dead. The commander of the Sea King's army, Iron Hammer, had lost his son and was very angry. The old turtle offered his condolences, but this only made Iron Hammer even angrier, for he had lost his only son. The turtle begged Iron Hammer not to take his son on the campaign and to let him live. Returning home from work at night, the turtle immediately met with his son. He said he had good news and bad news. The good news was that the turtle's son had been given the title of Commander-in-Chief. The bad news was that the turtle's son would now go to the island of Fallen Fish to the Crucian Carp tribe. There was something new on Fishfall Island, because the fish people were tied up and being prepared to be cooked. The players couldn't find the spices and demanded that the monster reveal where they were hidden. The players from the ghost ship seized supplies from the island, which was excellent news because they had provisions and could explore other islands. But soon, new events were about to unfold. The players' wave of revenge for being humiliatingly cooked for dinner attracted the army of the Sea King. The size of the sea monsters was staggering even to the program developers. Perhaps it was time to worry about the players' fleet. Suddenly, a storm broke out at sea, and huge waves, taller than the ship, rose from the sea. The players realized that a battle was inevitable and prepared for combat. At that moment, huge sea monsters appeared from the waves, and Iron Hammer ordered his subordinates to destroy the creatures and avenge his son. The players sensed a great battle between the armies, but did not think it would happen so soon. Monsters were coming from all sides. At first, everything went very well for the army of sea monsters, because their opponents were poor swimmers and crashed together with their ships. Players who fell into the water after their ships were destroyed became easy targets for the Sea King's army. It was suggested to attack the elite monster to ease the situation for their comrades. Commander Ironhammer saw the ship that crashed into his son and destroyed it. Therefore, Ironhammer decided to take revenge with his own hands. The monster rushed into the attack because he was not going to stop until he destroyed this ghost ship. He fought for his life, striking the ghost ship, but it did not break. The players on the ship were slightly shocked by what was happening. They understood that the commander-in-chief of the sea monster army was trying to destroy them. Ironhammer continued to pound the ship, entering into a kind of frenzy, and soon a small crack appeared. The dragon ship's shield was broken, and the players decided to jump into the water to stop Ironhammer, just to prevent him from destroying the ship. A battle began between the player and Ironhammer, who was strong and also had spiked armor. The guild leader used the Rune of Power and still could not defeat the monster. It became clear that it was not necessary to have techniques against a powerful opponent. They did not work. Ironhammer crushed his opponent left and right, and was finally able to deliver the decisive blows. Other players were also unable to oppose the sea monsters when they found themselves face to face with them. The players realized that they needed to retreat, and some of the ships managed to turn around and flee. After the battle and using the Rune of Power, Ironhammer began to recover, but he still felt dizzy. Bai Li was upset that the players had fled and lost. She wanted them to continue playing, and considered it necessary to introduce rewards for exploring the sea territory. Then she saw some of the players setting up a long fishing line to catch a huge fish, and Bai Li guessed that Poseidon was the main target from the beginning. Lu Wu was happy because their army was conquering not only the land, but also the sea. Sure enough, after a few days, the players realized the gap between the strength of the players at sea and the army of the Sea King. They began to strengthen their ships, but most players did not have the money for reinforcements, so they went to the northern region to cut down tree demons. A phone call interrupted the conversation, and the young man answered. It was a caller named Manman, who suggested going out and having fun. The beautiful girl said that she rarely came to the city and had just gotten off the plane. Lu Wu agreed to meet her and spend time together, which seemed very suspicious to Bai Li. She made a jealous scene and demanded to know who Manman was. Lu Wu said that he was a childhood friend. They lived next door to each other, and their families were friends. Manman later moved to another city, and now she had simply suggested meeting up. The young man did not want to take Bai Li with him, even though she promised to protect him. The girl made a banal scene of jealousy, and now had no intention of letting Lu Wu go. The guy barely managed to escape from the house. On top of that, Bai Li overheard Manman calling him Daddy Dog. It was an old story from childhood. It happened back in kindergarten when the teacher wanted to keep the boys and girls from getting too close. She forbade them from kissing because it could lead to pregnancy. But the little boy remembered that he had kissed a dog, which soon gave birth to puppies, and the child suffered psychological trauma because he became a doggy daddy. The young man arrived at the meeting place where he was supposed to meet Manman. She was happy to greet him. He also noted how she had grown up and become even more beautiful, although her personality remained unpleasant. A work call interrupted their conversation. Manman confirmed that she wanted to collaborate on broadcasting the gaming event. The girl was talking to her uncle, Wugoi, who had been friends with her father for a long time, and was now going to discuss business directly. Manman was surprised that the gaming company was not thinking about profit. Perhaps they were very rich, or it was some kind of powerful corporation, and cooperation did not fit in with their development philosophy. Wugoi also couldn't understand what the developers were thinking, but if Manman wanted to obtain the rights to broadcast live, she would have to offer a huge sum of money. Her uncle promised to help her contact the game's producers, but he wasn't sure if the meeting would take place. That was the end of the business conversation. The girl apologized to her friend for being distracted by an important call, but now she was ready to spend time with him. She suggested they go for a walk together because she hadn't been in the city for a long time. Besides, she was hungry, and they still had the whole evening ahead of them. Late at night, Lu Wu returned to the apartment, where he was met by an angry Bei Li. She, of course, knew that in the spring, some animals change their habits depending on the mating season. Their argument was interrupted by a call from the president of the Wu platform, who invited the young man to a meeting at his office the next day on a very important matter. The young man tried to get out of the meeting, saying he was busy, but the president insisted, saying they needed to discuss the live broadcast of gaming tournaments. The young man remembered that the platform did not broadcast tournaments live. Wugoi confirmed that it was a cool corporation that had approached him with the aim of establishing ties with the developers of the game, War in the Network. The young man was very pleased, because he knew that the corporation that wanted to meet with him was really strong in its field. Lu Wu confirmed that he would attend the meeting and made a reservation at a restaurant in advance. The next day, a big feast was to take place, and little Bei Li was looking forward to eating her fill. But it all started with an unexpected meeting when all the participants got to know each other. Manman was the representative of the corporation, and Papa Dog was responsible for the game War on the Net. Bei Li was ready to kill her comrade when she heard that he had a child. A real mess ensued because the young man introduced Bei Li as his friend, but the president of the platform, Wugoi, remembered that she was his sister. Everyone present simply incinerated the young man with their glances. And while Manman thought about how noble Lu Wu was for adopting the girl, Bei Li was about to tear the hair out of this insolent girl. Finally, the passion subsided, and it was time to talk business. Lu Wu trusted his childhood friend and immediately agreed to cooperate and promote the game. He did not want to make any special conditions, except that the corporation would cover the costs of organizing and holding events. Wugoi didn't understand what was going on, but he realized that he just needed to quietly make money and prepare, because he had heard insider information. He wasn't as interested in this as he used to be. In the illusory sea area was the island of buzzing insects. Players had already tried to get there 3 times, but so far without success. They wanted to steal the child of the sea, but the wolf guards changed every few hours, and the chances of a favorable outcome were very low. The players took advantage of a 2-minute break in the guarding of the mysterious fruit, which gave the blessing of the sea god and endowed the player with a random talent. This proved to be enough, and the player Lu Chai received an epic treasure. But the guard wolves noticed the thieves and were ready to deal with the players. Pu Chai actually couldn't stand dogs, and now looked suspiciously at the PSA from the mythical guild. He was tolerated for his group healing skills, but the player accidentally stepped on his paw. The dog's barking attracted the guards, and now the players had to make a quick getaway. Soon, several gamers were destroyed, but it turned out that the dog was the son of the owner of the island of buzzing insects. The monstrous wolf offered the player to give him the fruit, Child of the Sea, and free the puppy. Then he would let the players go. Liu Cha didn't believe him and thought he was just trying to scare them, but the wolf continued to use the player's friend as a shield and suggested that they think carefully about their comrade's fate. Liu Cha was ready to sacrifice his friend, and this simply stunned the guard wolves, and when the player killed the puppy, they were completely speechless. It was crazy. The player didn't care about his fellow creature, but now the guard wolves would definitely have problems with their boss. The boss had ordered them to kill all creatures and make them suffer, without missing a single one. Overall, it was a confusing situation with these crazy strangers, who were very reckless when their lives were at stake. 3 hours later, a notification arrived. The player Pu Chai had received an oceanic spiritual body. This happened after he sat with the fruit. The player received the blessing of the sea and could now increase his passive abilities while in the water. In addition, all his skills were restored to their maximum within a few seconds. This dramatic increase in options amazed the other players. After all, they only had 1 or 2 abilities, whereas here we were talking about the ocean spirit completely restoring the player. Soon, one of the players brought the boss a new item found on the island. It turned out to be rice shoots, a unique spiritual material that grew and could be used for alchemy or crafting. This unique item was the most valuable thing the players could find at this level. It seemed that sea monsters were very skilled in the spiritual realm. Lu Wu didn't understand why the girl demanded that this unique item be made. In addition, he had to spend a huge amount of soul coins to create it. Bai Li said that if he wanted to become as great as Prince Bechi, he needed to start building his strong form from the very beginning. Of course, this material was weak, but gradually it would accumulate strength and become highly valuable. The young man still did not understand what ability he should train. Bai Li handed him a black sheet and said that he would train with this item. With the help of the artifact, the young man analyzed it and was ready to start. He realized that this black sheet gave him the ability to create monsters from the ground to the clouds, and would become the most powerful black paradise. He had to choose a monster in his mind and transform its form. The young man considered various options and settled on a monster in the form of a dog's head. As the black sheet burned, this demon named Swanee would begin to disappear, absorbing and gathering all the energy for the young man. But soon, something unprecedented happened. What Lu Wu saw in the mirror was very cute and childlike. He became a monster in the form of a kitten. This was his basic form. It was feeding time, and he ate the seeds of life that would help him transform into human form soon. Lu Wu chewed the seeds of life thoughtfully and realized that the girl had tricked him and that he would have to listen to her in order to transform into human form. The cat was very sad because his life had become completely hopeless, and this cat life was just beginning. He wondered when it would end,